All right, we are now supposedly live, so it's time to pay attention to this if it loads. Yeah. Oh, no, the live stream has already started, silly. Well, it refuses to recognize. Oh, now it's live. There we go. There we go. Ah, shit, I gotta turn the volume off. Oh, no. All right, now it's time for the New Hampshire primary live stream. I'm going to assume that, as usual, not many people are probably, there's 3 viewers right now. I'm not going to pay any attention to the Google Hangouts page there. I'm going to be on the chat. Pro tip, though, I probably won't be answering questions right away. Voltion, I will say this, and that's actually something I had to mention. I am just getting over a cold. So my voice may be a bit crackly. I do have some water with me. I may take a few breaks. I'm starting this, almost an hour before the actual results come in, specifically because the exit polling is now out. And if the exit polling is remotely true, I know in Iowa it was a little bit screwy. They didn't really do proper exit polling because of the caucus system as far as sort of what different classifications of people broke for which candidates. Now, though, we do have proper exit polling. The people need to realize the one thing that people need to understand: a caucus and a primary are not the same thing. This is probably why it was a little odd in Iowa. In Iowa, with a caucus system, you have to actually, literally, physically go sit where your candidates supporters are sitting. It's very public. It's very open. This could have depressed Trump's support. It could have depressed support for many other candidates because somebody's, they feel nervous. They're not really willing to show visibly and publicly that they're supporting a specific candidate, especially somebody like Trump, who a lot of people deeply, deeply disagree with. I'm going to assume that some of his softer supporters probably sat it out and didn't go sit with the Trump people, and that probably depressed turnout for Trump. But in the primary, it's more like how you vote in a general election, where you go and you basically, like here in Vermont, where we have a primary, you just go and you get your piece of paper, you go into the booth, you fill it out, you put it in the machine or hand it in or whatever, and you're all done. That's really how it works. If the exit polling that just came out from Fox, CNN, MSNBC, and others is true, then Trump and Kasich are going to rule the night. Hello, Anthony. For those that are just joining, I'm not going to be responding to the chat quite yet because I got to get a few things out of the way here before the results actually start coming in around 7 Eastern. I'm on Eastern time. I'm only a few mountains and a river away from New Hampshire. But in the exit polling that we're seeing right now, what looks like to be the case is that the 2 distinct classifications of voters that are really, really powerful in New Hampshire are going heavily for Trump and Kasich. Specifically independent voters, those that are not actually pledged to the Republicans or the Democrats at the beginning of the night. And I'm also going to assume they're going to heavily support Sanders. Sanders is going to absolutely dominate Hillary Clinton. He'll probably be upwards of 45, maybe 45 or 50. No, because there's only 2 candidates. 55 or 60, sorry. He'll be up there. He'll probably completely dominate her. As for the Republicans, the independents, the exit polling I've seen shows Trump with a commanding lead among the independents, because many of those independents, the reason that they're independent, they don't really like the establishment necessarily within either party. They're not going to vote for somebody like Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton. They're disenfranchised, or they're not partisans, in other words. They have no reason to vote for somebody who's, from within the centrist establishment, the big money candidates. You'd think of somebody like Marco Roboto, and I know people liked that song, which I thought was funny, or Ted Cruz to a lesser extent, certainly somebody like Jeb or Hillary. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to vote for them. As for the late deciders, they appear to be almost evenly split between Trump and Kasich. I'm not surprised. Kasich above all of the other people in either party, has spent single-mindedly almost all of his time in New Hampshire. Kasich was the only one that showed up at Dixville Notch, which is why he won 3 votes to Trump's 2 there. That's sort of, by the way, oddly enough, a bellwether for how the state's going to vote. Now, is Kasich going to be the victor and win first place tonight? No, the chance is not there for him to do that. But he probably will finish second. I said before, Kasich was probably in the best position because he was so single-mindedly focused on New Hampshire to take second there. This is actually really good for Trump going forward, and I'll tell you why. The perfect lineup of the night for Donald Trump would be obviously him winning the state, Kasich coming in second, and Rubio coming in third, for several reasons. If Jeb comes in the top 3, suddenly he becomes, I mean, he's going to become the next Fox News candidate because Rubio will slip out of the top 3. They'll be talking about, oh, Jeb is on the rise, the Jeb-mentum or something like that. They'll shill it up for Jeb Bush because he's a big money candidate with hundreds of millions of dollars in donations. The category of the video is set to music. Well, that's odd, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's got tags the way I set it up with Google Hangouts. I know that there's also an encoding option you can use, but you can't put tags on it for some reason. So I don't care. It doesn't matter that it's on music. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. The perfect lineup is Trump, Kasich, and then Rubio. If Jeb is denied one of the top 3 spots, he came in 5th in Iowa. So he's already looking weak. You know, this is somebody with hundreds of millions of dollars. He's got the major corporate donors. He's got the bankers on his side. He's got the Bush family name. He's a definite establishment candidate. If he doesn't come in the top 3 here, what the hell is he going to do going forward into South Carolina? He's going to continue losing national support. Rubio already came in 3rd place in Iowa. If Rubio, who has been in 2nd place now for some time just behind Trump, doesn't manage to take that 2nd place spot, he's underperforming. And nobody in the media is going to be able to say, oh, well, Rubio had a fantastic night. They're all expecting him to come in 2nd place. If Kasich surges up to 2nd place, Rubio underperforms. That means of the top 3, you've got Rubio, who everyone will say, well, he was supposed to finish 2nd. Well, why didn't he? Why is he in 3rd? And then you have Kasich, who has an abnormally strong night, but doesn't have any national presence. Kasich has put literally everything into New Hampshire, which is why he's appears in the exit polling anyway to be outperforming his expectations. It looks like he's gobbled up a significant chunk of the late deciders, about as many as Trump did, and possibly less than Trump, but possibly a rather large number of the undeclared voters, specifically because a lot of these people, they've met Kasich, they've shook his hand. You shake the candidate's hand. He's been there for months and months and months. He's gone to the smallest communities. That's how he's hoping. I mean, he's hoping to win. He's probably not going to, but if he has a strong 2nd place showing, it doesn't help Kasich become the nominee because he still didn't win. I mean, he was like, what, I think 6th in Iowa or 7th. He doesn't have a presence in South Carolina. He doesn't have a presence in Nevada. His campaign is doomed, but he has just successfully denied somebody like Cruz or Jeb a top 3 spot. Now, what happens to Jeb if he comes in 5th again, which is possible? It's possible that Jeb is going to have another terrible night, come in 5th. He's now out of the top 3, out of the top 4 in both of the 2 beginning states. He might break 3rd in South Carolina. But as I've pointed out, there has not been a nominee in either party in living memory who has actually become the nominee without winning at least one of the states. Now, Cruz already won Iowa. He might pull 4th in New Hampshire tonight. He could pull 3rd. In theory, he could get 2nd place, but is that likely? All indicators point to Kasich taking the 2nd place slot. And Rubio, has been the second place candidate. If he gets supplanted by Kasich, that puts him in third. Again, underwhelming. I mean, he was hoping to get a second place win or maybe even win the state based on Trump suddenly faltering in national polling. But if Rubio comes in third, or you know, Satan forbid he comes in fourth or fifth, that bump's over. It was already a temporary bump in New Hampshire. We've already seen the polling. It would be very difficult for him to suddenly rise 17 points and take first place and supplant Trump. And as for the Democrats, we all know what's going to happen in New Hampshire on the Democratic side. Bernie Sanders is a major name in New Hampshire. Here in Vermont, which is where I am, we're the twin state of New Hampshire. We have a twofold culture. We share a border. We share many aspects of our style of government. We're both primary states where we're more secular than the national average. New Hampshire's sort of like the slightly more libertarian, gun-friendly side. We're the more hippie-ish sort of weed-smoking side. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders is very, very well known in New Hampshire. Hillary Clinton's not. Hillary Clinton is, most of these people in the exit polling anywhere talking about how they want a candidate from out. They don't want an establishment candidate. They want someone outside. Well, what better way to go forward with that is with Bernie Sanders, a self-proclaimed socialist. Whatever you think of his actual policies, he does represent a break from the Democratic core. That is, the Democratic Party is much like the Republican Party. The Bush family and the Clinton family and all of these people essentially have the same views. They're controlled by the same banks and corporations, and as such, they pass similar legislation. They bicker and they put on a show for people on C-SPAN and pretend not to get along. At the end of the day, they go drinking together. They basically believe the same thing, and that is what is best for as many monopolistic corporations and major billionaire banks as possible. That's what they support because that's where their money's coming from. They're completely beholden to them. Sanders hasn't been taking their money. Hillary is, Cruz is, all these others are. Sanders isn't, and Trump isn't. Those are the two people left in the race who don't have the backing of these groups, which is why I would love to see a Trump versus Sanders race. I'm not going to vote. I mean, as a self-employed individual, I'll put this out there. Bernie Sanders is a senator from my state. He's a Vermonter. I respect him as a senator, but I wouldn't vote for him for the presidency, and I'll tell you why. Under the sort of fiscal plan that Bernie Sanders has put forward, a person like myself whose income comes from self-employment, I'm an author, an editor, and an illustrator, would be taxed at such a massive rate, I would go nowhere. I would make no headway whatsoever. It wouldn't make any sense for me to support him. It's not going to happen. As for Trump, I like his views on taxes. I like his views on guns. I'm extraordinarily strongly pro-Second Amendment. I don't care if people own machine guns. Honestly, I don't see a problem with that, and I don't see a constitutional constraint on people doing so. As for his views on immigration, though, people are not realizing that in order to carry out the plan that Trump has proposed, would require, in the border states especially, violating the Constitution on a day-to-day basis. In order to actually force out all of these illegals, you will have to go house to house without warrants, no-knock raid style, and kick out all of the immigrants. Well, what happens when all of the Tea Partiers from the Deep South and all of the militia individuals and all of the very strongly pro-Second Amendment people who otherwise like Trump get a knock on their door and a bunch of heavily armed agents suddenly force their way in looking for illegals? They're not going to be very happy with that. I see a big problem with that plan. Now, would he temper his views in the future? I don't care if he builds a wall. I don't have a problem with that. It should have been built long ago. But would he temper his views? If he did, then I might support somebody like Trump. But I can't right now with his views specifically on mass deportation any more than I can Sanders, even though I may respect him as a senator, even though I may like him as a person. I sure as hell think he's more honest than Hillary. I mean, Hillary's gone off the fucking deep end. She's calling all of her critics sexist now through her fucking retarded husband now. So I don't give a fuck about Hillary Clinton. Even if I think he's more honest and more dignified, I don't like his economic views, because for me to vote for him, it would be suicidal. For me to vote for somebody like Donald Trump, it would be cutting off my own head financially. I don't care if I have free healthcare. I don't need free healthcare. I sure as hell don't want my taxes to go up 20 or 30% to pay for healthcare. Because what am I going to use that healthcare for? I'm going to use it to, I don't know, buy new glasses. Well, I can do that on my own. I don't need healthcare for that. I go to Lens Crafters, get a $5 plastic frame or something, and have the same friggin' lenses put in over and over. I've been wearing the same glasses for years anyway. They work just fine. My vision hasn't changed. Oh, for a general checkup. Well, the thing that I don't like about Sanders' plan most of all, it isn't even fundamentally, well, it's going to cost more because, you've got nationalized healthcare. It doesn't address the cost of goods in medical services. That's the problem. If you don't reduce the cost, it doesn't matter if you're providing it for free. You're going to have to bump everybody's taxes up 20, 30, 40%. Now, I don't really fundamentally care if Sanders was going to pay for this by saying, well, we're going to go after offshore accounts. We're going to go after the hedge fund managers, so the manipulator class, the parasitic class that doesn't really produce anything and just sort of manipulates currency. The class that is represented classically by certain meme images that we won't discuss. I don't care if that's where he wants to get the money from, but when he's talking about, oh, well, people who are making, $10,000 or $20,000 a year are going to have 5% higher taxes. What the fuck is the purpose of that? It doesn't matter if you're providing them free healthcare. A lot of the people in that income bracket are very young. They don't use it. They don't need to use it. That's a worse idea than Obamacare, which is some sort of weird hybrid system whereby, again, the costs are not going down. They're not going down because there's not enough competition. You've got too much government there already. It's monopolistic. It's exactly why, for instance, wages are low in the private sector, costs are higher in the private sector, and rising every day. It's because there's not enough competition. Get rid of the government protectionism, and the costs go down, the wages go up, the cost of medical services will plummet, and you won't have this problem. You won't need free healthcare because anybody under the sun can fucking afford it. Subsidize it for the really poor, and that's all you'll have to do. Anybody else will be able to pay peanuts for their health care. We used to use this system, by the way. It worked very well until the government got involved and started nitpicking and regulating everything. That's the fucking problem. So here's my prediction based on the exit polling. Sanders is going to win. We already know that. I mean, it's almost not worth discussing the Democratic race. We know Sanders is going to win New Hampshire. We know Hillary is going to win South Carolina because she's got the black voters completely stacked up for her. I don't know why. It's not like the minority community actually gets any fucking benefit from having her in the White House. She's going to do like Bubba did. What the hell did Bubba ever do for the minority community other than pass laws that made sure that more of them went to jail because he said, oh, I want to be tougher on crime? Well, it didn't work, or it doesn't seem to. All the cities that are still implementing your fucking retarded policies have the highest crime rate. It's because of the drug war. And here was a president who said, oh, yeah, I tried marijuana but didn't inhale. Yeah, okay, Bubba, you didn't inhale. Did Hillary inhale? I bet she did. She probably inhaled a lot more than just pot, by the way. I'm sure she was snorting other stuff up her nose, probably injecting stuff into her veins. Because I look at them when they were younger. They're fucking hippies. They were using everything. They probably dropped acid before having sex. We all know it. I don't care that they did that. I also don't care that Bubba fucks anything that moves. But he didn't help the minority community, and yet somehow the minority community is heavily in favor of Hillary, as opposed to Sanders, that's actually offering them free healthcare and free education for all, and saying he's going to take millions of people out of the prison system by just letting them go. It seems to me that something is a little bit screwy here when they're supporting Hillary. I don't quite understand it. There are segments of the population, maybe not me, maybe not people who, work hard for a living, maybe not people who are self-employed, but there are segments of the population that would honestly do better under Sanders. However, there's nobody in the population who would do better under a Clinton presidency. Nobody. Women would not suddenly magically be paid more. It wouldn't happen. Bigotry would not magically go away. Not going to happen. Wages will not rise. The minimum wage will not rise. States might take initiative. Towns might take initiative. Federal government under Hillary, they'll do what they did under Bubba. Not going to happen. There won't be some feel-good 90s era sort of Clintonian feel to a Hillary presidency. The only reason people go back to the Bubba era and say, oh, the 90s are peaceful and, you know, things were prosperous and the costs were a lot lower and things were great, it's because the USSR had just collapsed. The United States' major competitor had just collapsed in the 1990s. That's why it was a feel-good era. That's why gas prices were low. We didn't have to worry about the Soviet Union fucking with supply lines. That's why. It had nothing to do with any of Clinton's policies. In fact, it was Reagan's policies. Reagan spent them into oblivion. By the way, Ronald Reagan wasn't a great president either. He almost broke our economy doing it. The only thing is, theirs broke first. Ha ha. We got the benefits for a half a decade. And now we're right back where we started. Things are even more tenuous now than they were in the 80s or sometime like that. You think that the nuclear risk was high back then, it's higher now because now you have militant guerrilla groups that have access to uranium. So I'm going to take a drink here really quickly. Anyway, that's for the Democratic side. Yeah, it's going to be Bernie Sanders. He doesn't really have any competition. He may outperform. And I hope he does. He's the more honest candidate. You know, even if I wouldn't support him, he is more honest than Hillary. And certainly Bubba. Bubba's losing it. You can tell by the strange look on his face that his mind's starting to go. With the Republicans, Trump will win. As for who comes in second, I'm betting Kasich, which is great for Trump and also great for Kasich. However, you can't quite be sure. If you look at the polling, there's a four-way tie for the second and third slots here between Kasich, who has spent the most time in the state, Cruz, who has more support amongst the sort of this much smaller than Iowa, but the evangelical community there, and sort of the Tea Partiers, maybe some of the libertarians. I don't think so. No self-proclaimed libertarian's going to vote for Cruz anyway. And then you have Rubio, who's sort of the establishment, the status quo candidate, sort of like a Romney or a McCain or a Bush. And then you have Jeb, he's basically the same as Rubio, only not as well spoken. Rubio's problem was the last debate. He fucking breaks down. He suffers a major fucking malfunction right up on stage in front of millions and millions of people. And who is it that actually gets him to do that? It wasn't Trump. It wasn't Cruz. It wasn't one of these top tier people. It was Chris Christie. Now, when Chris Christie bests you in an argument, you know you have a fucking problem. Because Chris Christie is one of the least effective candidates up on stage. Chris Christie's two big things so far have been, I will be tough on drugs and hurl people into prison, which, I mean, that's not going to play well to the average, more libertarian New Hampshire voter. And then, I'm sort of a centrist. I shook hands with Obama and talked about how great his response to the hurricane was. And the Republicans don't like me because of that. And yet he ends up going after another sort of establishment, big runny Republican. It was actually rather funny. If you hear any whining in the background, that's actually the cat playing with her toys. She brings them to the door, and then she yowls, and she wanders off. And then she brings more toys to the door, and she does the same thing. She does it over and over and over again. She also does it when I'm asleep, and I'm an insomniac, so it wakes me up. I can't help it. There's no way to cause her to stop doing that. It's always the same 5 or 6 toys over and over every single night. I find it very endearing. Anyway, I'm going to look at the comments here for a bit. We've got another half an hour or so before the first results come in. I've also got several tabs open here. I've got a live blog and also the primary map, which is actually from the LA Times. This, I don't know if it's actually live updating, so I'll have to refresh it from time to time here. Actually, let me refresh it now and see if it's changed. No, it hasn't. Right now, Donald Trump is in the lead with 9 votes. Tied with Cruz and Kasich, each having 9 votes apiece. Chris Christie's in fourth place with 3 votes. Poor Marco Rubio and Jeb, though, they only have 2 apiece. And as for Sanders, he's got twice as many as fucking Clinton. That 60.7% for Sanders, based just on, I think, 2 townships, might hold throughout the night. actually. Honestly, Sanders probably, if I had to guess. He's going to get almost all of the independents that choose to vote for the Democrats. He's going to get most of the late deciders. Yeah, it's not going to be Hillary. Enlightened despotism, I would say, from Titus Schulten. There's no such thing as enlightened despotism. I'm a libertarian. I believe in liberty. I'd be an anarchist if I wasn't also a realist, essentially. I support government that's constrained as much as possible because government is the problem. Government's responsible for everything that people on the left and the right perceive of as bad. It all comes from the government. When the Republicans talk about something bad the Democrats did, it's the government that did that. It just happens to be the Democrats within the government and vice versa. It's always the government. It can be any subgroup within the government, but it's still always the government. Flint, it's the government. Hurricane Katrina, the poor response there, it's a bureau. It's part of the government. It's always the government. The government's responsible for literally everything that goes wrong in this country. That's why I joined the Libertarian Party. I will be voting for Gary Johnson, unless again, somebody like Trump has a magical revelation regarding their character. I mean, I don't mind Trump. I think he's better than the other Republicans. I don't mind Sanders. I think he's better than Hillary. But I'm not going to vote for them. I have too many disagreements with what they believe in to do so. Even if I think that they're the lesser of all evils within their party, it's still an evil. Even if it's a tolerable evil that I think would generally do okay in the presidency, I have to vote for the best candidate. To me, that's Gary Johnson. I wouldn't vote for McAfee. The only thing that would keep me from voting for the Libertarians is if McAfee managed to become their nominee, because I fucking hate that retard. He's a fucking turd. I'd vote for Trump out of spite if that happened at this point. So yeah, if McAfee gets in there, then I won't be voting for the Libertarian Party. I'll withdraw my endorsement of them. My throat's already starting to itch a little bit here, but at some point, probably right before 7, I'll take a quick 10-minute break or something. That should help. But yeah, I'm going to pay attention to the chat here so that I don't ramble too much. It helps if I have questions or comments or something like that to prompt me. And I'll also be clicking some of these tabs, making sure I don't have any important messages on Farcebook or anything like that. Bobby Jones is a crazy communist. Ted Cruz is a retard. He's not even eligible. How I really feel? How I really feel is the government's a pile of doo-doo. Again, the Republican and Democratic parties have been responsible for every ill since the Civil War. They're the problem. Voting for one over the other no longer makes sense. People should have realized that 100 years ago, but they didn't. My songs. Yeah, I should probably talk about this briefly. Did people like the Marco Robato song? I'm going to assume yes, judging from the number of people who watched it. I actually have songs on my second channel, Fat Hawaiian Man. So yeah, you can look into that if you're interested in the singing side of Styx, Hex, and Hammer. But I'm just looking at the comments here. Well, I guess people like the song. Yeah, there are others on Fat Hawaiian Man. Most of them are ICQ related. And some of them that I had there got taken down due to copyright. See, that's why I have most of them on the other channel. I don't care if that channel gets taken down. You know, fuck Fat Hawaiian Man. I try to keep as little copyrighted material as possible on my main channel. I'll be moving the Marco Robato song and the David Bowie tribute to the second channel as well in time. I just do that to protect my channel, even though because I'm a YouTube partner, I don't really get a strike for that and it's just sort of monetized. I don't want to take the risk since YouTube tends to change its fucking policies and not tell anybody. So yeah. The Congress of Flint. Flint's not the place that passed the sodomy laws. It was Michigan. Apparently the people in Michigan don't understand the concept of blue laws. The anti-sodomy string of laws was already struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court in the 90s. This is called a blue law. It means that they're standing on principle and passing a law that's not actually enforceable. They can't actually put you in jail for having anal sex. in Michigan, what this means is that they're showing that they're opposed to it morally, and that they don't really care about the court's decision. It's just a form of petulant protest. Term limits. You mean I'm assuming you mean for Congress. I don't support term limits for Congress. If a person is qualified for the job and continues to get elected by the people of their state, I don't really have a problem with that. I don't think that they should get a pension when they leave, though. I think we should eliminate congressional pensions, because that's a lot of money. Some of these people make more money on their pensions than they ever did when they were in Congress. I think it's unnecessary. These people already get like thousands of dollars just to make a 10-minute speech. Why the hell do they need a pension for? They're not, they didn't spend 50 years cleaning garbage or mopping floors or something, or doing electrical work. They don't need a fucking pension. To analytical failure, a fringe anti-establishment alliance. Oh, it'll never happen. It can't. The left and right in this country are too polarized to come together. What you're referring to is really the Libertarian Party. The Libertarians have the correct views from the left and right on most issues. There's still a few things that I have a problem with some libertarians on. Some of them, they're sort of the Jesus people. Oh, well, the separation of church and state isn't really in the Constitution. Well, if these people were libertarian enough to study the founders, they'd realize that that's actually the case. But yeah, Bush does not have a chance to become the Republican nominee. Even if he does manage to even if he came in second tonight, Bush won't be the nominee. The fact that he's named Bush doesn't help him. He's not good at debating. He's not good at public speaking. He's extremely awkward. Some people claim he has like Asperger's syndrome or something. That's possible, I guess. It doesn't, it's not that he's not an imposing figure who doesn't have, ties to the establishment and thus plenty of money. And it's not that he doesn't have political experience. It's because of these things that he doesn't have any support. That's been Rubio's problem. His momentum was blunted because people realized, oh, that's right. Remember, this is actually just somebody who takes millions of dollars from the same people that back every other candidate. Here's what I don't understand. How can somebody who is a partisan, who's a partisan Republican or Democrat, how can they support somebody like Rubio, say, oh, he's great, and then talk badly about like Ted Cruz when they're getting money from the same people? Now, if the same big corporate backers are backing both of them, wouldn't that indicate some sort of kinship on their part? So you should either support just say, well, whatever establishment candidate is nominated is just fine with me, or you should be against them all. They're getting money from the same people. That's why Trump and Sanders are doing so well, because one of them is self-funded and one of them is grassroots. Sanders isn't getting his money from a whole bunch of bankers and things like that. He's getting much of his money from a bunch of unions and people who individually donate to his campaign. And these are people who spend 10, 20 bucks and donate to him. That's where his support is coming from, which I respect. Regardless of his views, I can respect that. He's much more honest. I've seen Bernie Sanders. I watched him debate here in Rutland when he was running against Rich Tarrant for the Senate position back when I was in high school. I saw him. I saw him coming out of the airport once. He just sort of hurried along. He doesn't have 20 bodyguards around him. He's not wearing a $5,000 suit. He was in a fucking t-shirt and blue jeans. I can respect that. He really is just a normal person when you think about it. He may have weird fiscal views, but he is just a normal person. He doesn't live in a mansion. He's got a bunch of debt from credit cards and stuff. I don't know what he spent it on. Probably ice cream around here. But yeah, pretty soon we're going to start getting the results in. Let me check the tabs here again. No, the map still hasn't updated. Oh, what a shame. Sometimes these so-called live pages aren't really live, I think. John Kasich is the most searched Republican candidate in New Hampshire on primary day. See, I'm not surprised at that, actually. It's been New Hampshire bust for John Kasich's Republican presidential campaign. The Ohio governor, by the way, he did do a good job as governor, admittedly, is looking for a strong result in an effort to claim the leading establishment or moderate candidate position. He's actually to the right of Ted Cruz. Most people don't realize this. I don't care, but it's true anyway. And if Google search trends are any indicator, Kasich may be in luck. The governor received more interest Tuesday in New Hampshire than any other GOP candidate, including frontrunner Donald Trump. See, that's why I think he's going to come in second. In fact, he might outperform and come in closer to Trump than anything, which gives him star of the night mode. I mean, Trump will probably complain if Kasich comes in second and everyone's talking about him. Trump will complain. He shouldn't, though. He should be very happy that Kasich came in second, doesn't have a national ground game and can't get anywhere. I mean, he's going to be off the board in South Carolina, but has successfully denied at least one of the other major candidates, that is essentially at this point Rubio, Cruz, and Jeb, a spot on the top three. Now, like I said, the best case scenario for Trump is winning Iowa with Kasich in second and Rubio in third. Why? Rubio already came in third in Iowa. Another third place showing is not going to get a lot of attention, especially if Kasich and Trump are the ones everyone's talking about. If Cruz gets in third, though, he's already won Iowa. This sets him up as a stronger contender. Even if he's still unlikely to get the nomination, it would strengthen his position. Him not being in the top three would be very bad for his candidacy because it would show he can't get the moderate vote. Jeb coming in third would get all of the establishment shills that have been piling on Rubio, saying, oh, well, Jeb's the new front runner. Jeb meant him. Jeb is now our candidate of choice. Just ignore the fact that he's related to one of the worst presidents of modern times. By the way, before anyone thinks that, yes, the Koch brothers like Kasich, they also like Ted Cruz. But then again, Bobby Jones, remember that the Koch brothers donated millions to Walker before he fumbled and dropped out. The Koch brothers are not all encompassing within the GOP. I know a lot of people talk just about, oh, the Koch brothers control the Republican Party. They're, I believe, the 33rd largest donor with their business empire. They're the 33rd on the list of donors to political campaigns. Of the top five, four of them primarily or solely give money to the Democrats. But yeah, let me answer this first, and I'll try to remember what the fuck I was talking about. How do you think Trump will change once he is president? You mean if, I'm assuming. It's not guaranteed. It's likely at this point, I will say that, but not guaranteed. He probably would not change much because the way in which he will continue to build his support is primarily by berating Congress, which tends to gravitate between 50 and 20% approval. He'll just lash out at Congress over and over, gain the bully pulpit, and he'll use that to pass the laws that he wants. And he'll also use the fact that a lot of people in D.C. owe him favors, which means that he would be all powerful for at least the first year or two of his first term. Because, I mean, people probably owe him hundreds of millions of collected dollars in Congress, in various governors' mansions around the country. He's donated to state-level campaigns, governors, lieutenant governors, the bureaucrats, obviously, and others. Trump has donated to many of them. He'd have his way with them for some time, which could be good or bad. If you assume that he's primarily out of touch but benevolent, then it'd probably be good. If you assume that in some conspiratorial manner that he's actually pure evil and wants to destroy people and just make himself more powerful, then it'd be very bad. I choose to believe the former, and it's based on this, and this is what I was going to say. Look back at Trump's comments on the Iraq War, back when George W. Bush, a Republican, was president. He fucking excoriated George W., and not without good reason. All he could talk about was the fact that people were coming back missing arms and legs. He talked about all the dead Iraqis. I think that Trump is running because he saw that the Iraq War was a delusional way for a handful of corporations to make money. I think that bothered him. I think that Trump is a corporatist with some level of scruples. I think that he draws the line. This is what I think about Trump, honestly. I think that he draws the line at people actually getting killed or maimed. I think that he would do just about anything else to make money, including, the usual mobster stuff that goes on Wall Street and places. But then he saw one of these big money families that he was in. I mean, he was in bed with him, obviously. He probably donated to George W. when he was running, or maybe he was an Al Gore donor. We're not quite sure. I think that when he saw people coming back with these injuries, saw how out of touch W was, how dangerous Dick Cheney was, and he would have been getting inside information on W because, you know, everyone else in DC he had already donated to and had favors from and was in communication with. I think he considered W to be a traitor, honestly. I think Trump considers the entire Bush family to be fucking traitors. And I think he thinks the same about Obama based on the fact that many of Obama's policies have just continued Bush-era policies. And I agree with him. And if he were to come out and make it clear that that's what he believes, he'd have my vote. He would. Because it would be clear this is somebody who's running for the presidency primarily to expose the entire corrupt deal and take it down from the inside, having spent the last 3 decades funding it. I think he was personally bothered by 9/11, and I think that it was because of the fact that people in I think he's a nationalist. It's clear based on his comments regarding the wall and immigration, Muslims and stuff. I know he's clearly a nationalist. I think he felt personally insulted by the response to 9/11. I think he felt personally insulted by the war in Iraq and how badly it was handled. I think that he's not like a pacifist, like anti-war. And he's certainly not a friend of the Islamic nations of the world. But I think when he sees people making shitty deals with foreign entities, he feels insulted. He also feels financially used because a lot of his money comes from how well the U.S. economy is doing. And if the U.S. economy is being stamped down, I think Trump feels personally offended by people that he probably felt owed him because he donated to them. And so if he is running, and that's actually his idea, I don't have a problem with that. I think that's great. I think that he'll expose far more than the whole 9/11 report. I think he will get red pilled on that. I think he will release it. I don't think I think he'd probably want to put W in jail. Probably want to put Obama in jail too. Well, more power to him. Throw them both in the same cell and let them see who eats the other. You know, put them both in Gitmo for treason. I wouldn't have a problem with that. No, I think Trump's serious about the wall. Here's the thing. Building a wall, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem. I am pro-immigration. I don't have a problem with Mexicans. I don't have a problem with Central Americans. I don't care if 100 million of them come here. But you do have to have a border defense. I believe in streamlining the immigration system so that you don't have illegal immigrants. You don't need to have them. Just grant more legal immigration, make it more streamlined. Again, the government's the problem. The government post-Clinton made it post-Reagan, made it much, much more difficult to immigrate. My ex-wife was a Mexican. I saw the sort of paperwork immigrants have to go through to get into this country. Even if they are students here, they are law-abiding, they have a job, they've done nothing wrong, they've never been put in jail or suspected of any crime, they speak fluent English, they've got no radical ties at all, they're part of the totalist, they're just the most apple pie people you can imagine. I saw what they have to go through, and it's appalling. You're talking hundreds of fucking pages of paperwork, meetings with a lawyer every month or two, constant haranguing and harassment. You can get dragged back across the border for almost anything. I was married to a Mexican girl many years ago. I saw what they have to go through to get into this country, and it's insane. If I was born in another country, there's no way you could get me to fucking immigrate legally to the United States. Unless you have either tens of thousands of expendable dollars to spend getting in, you're going to illegally immigrate. It's just easier. It's far easier. You think that somebody who speaks broken English really has the time or the inclination between working 2 or 3 jobs and studying at the same time to go visit a lawyer across the border every fucking month? No, it's just, for most of these people, it just doesn't make sense. There's no reason to legally immigrate to this country. So I don't care if they build a wall, but they're not going to solve the problem of illegal immigration with a wall or with anything else, or even a mile-wide no man's land minefield. They're not going to solve it without solving the problem of too little legal immigrants. They need millions of them. There's demand for them. There are jobs for them. They're not the ones taking the jobs. The jobs are going overseas because of corporations, the same ones backing people like Cruz and Clinton. That's why I hate the fucking establishment. They're responsible for the problem. It took two parties to build the problem. It only takes one independent individual to take it down. I believe that individual, if he gets nominated and elected, would be Donald Trump. Right now, though, I would vote for Gary Johnson. Again, I may like many of his views. I may like the idea of crushing DC under the iron foot. I don't even care if he goes full Nazi. But at the same time, I disagree with him on enough issues. I think libertarianism is the way for me. Well, I probably shouldn't discuss that. That's her own private business, what happened to her. But I mean, we're not together. I haven't talked to her in years, so let that suffice. Yeah, and that's the other issue. Nowhere has Trump ever said anything about freezing immigration from Mexico or any other Latin American nation. He's talking about the Middle East. I support that. I don't have a problem with that. You think, here's the funny thing. Think of it this way. This is oh yeah, I'll talk about the exorcism of Cruz and Cruz being a pussy in a minute. Here's the thing. The same people who want to bring in millions of refugees, so-called, which are really just economic migrants from the Middle East and North Africa, are the same people. They'll cry bloody murder about Christian fundamentalism oppressing women, oppressing gays, causing violence, and so forth. Or you know, being right-wing. They support Republicans. And yet these same people want to bring in a bunch of fundamentalist Islamists who do the same thing and worse on a daily basis. We've seen it in Europe. It is happening. We're not blind to this fact. This is why I don't expect the Democrats to do well. People, we don't want to be like Europe. That's the one thing Rubio fucking said in his stupid robotic speech that actually was true. We don't want to be like Europe. There's no reason to be like them. They're failing. The Europeans are voting for a bunch of nationalists right now. Why are they doing that? Let's take a cue from the Europeans. They voted in the multiculturalists. They voted for socialism. It doesn't work. It clearly doesn't work because now they're voting for people who are just shy of the Nazi party, only without the socialism. They're just nationalists. You've got nationalists rising up in Finland forming gangs. You've got nationalists rising up in parts of Bavaria. You've got nationalists rising up in France with Front National. You've got nationalism taking root in Denmark, in Sweden, in Norway, in Switzerland. The Swiss have gone full nationalist. You've got Greek nationalists. You've got Turkish nationalists, Bozkurt. You've got Spanish. Nationalism has never been more popular. The last time that nationalism was popular in the 1930s, it was still a minority party within a minority of European states. It never really took hold outside of places like Italy and, well, monarchists really in Spain. And then in places like Germany. This time it's everywhere. All of Europe is becoming nationalist. People don't want to realize this. We're going through an interwar period style problem right now. And all they can do is well, Bobby Jones, you got to realize Black Bloc does the same thing. They're anarchists and anarcho-communists. They hide their faces too. When the government penalizes people for being members of these groups, yeah, they're going to hide their faces. It just makes sense. Nationalism is rising as the result of bad socialist and multiculturalist policies. What I want to avoid, I don't want Nazis marching through the streets of the United States. So I oppose the multiculturalists, because if multiculturalism and socialism do take hold here, that's what you're going to get. Do you want a Third Reich of the United States? That's what you're going to get if you keep having all these brain-dead multiculturalists here. I believe in libertarian-style nationalism. I don't like big government. I think if people hold to their own culture, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I don't care if immigrants hold to a subculture within their own regions too. We've got Irish people in like the Boston area. Nobody talks about, oh, those horrible Irish nationalists always eating their potato stew or anything like that. They just look at the Hispanics and do that. I don't have a problem with Hispanic nationalists. Half the people that I ever met that were like nationalists, they were Hispanics. They were American nationalists, though. They didn't give a fuck. But anyway, we're going to start getting some results probably here fairly soon. It is we're right up against 7 o'clock. So I'm going to take a quick break here for those who are watching. I'm going to go and get a good drink of fresh water. I'm almost done with this. Just going to put the mic down. Live stream will stay up. You know, I'm not going to, like, I don't even know if I can pause it, honestly. But I'm going to put this down. I'm going to take a breather, you know, clear my throat, because I don't want to do that on camera. It's gross. Yeah. Some of the Nazis were literal homosexuals. I think, wasn't it Goring was like, into cross-dressing or something. And don't even get me started on Himmler and what he did to chickens. So, yeah, I'm not a Nazi. Some people think I am because I allow Nazis to comment on my YouTube channel. But then again, I also let communists comment, you know, unless they're being abusive to my subs. So I'm going to take a quick break here, and I'll be right back. We're going to start getting results very soon. It is 7 o'clock. So I'll take a couple minutes. Maybe when I get back, there'll be some results. So be right back here. My gird. Water. I need water. And now it's time for more live streaming. Oh, yeah. All right, Ancient. There, I clapped for you, so don't hang yourself. I know that Jeb Bush might fucking hang himself after tonight if he comes in 5th place again. Let's see. Are we getting results? Oh, come on. Come on, live blog. You're not even really live. Oh, seriously, it's the bluest town in New Hampshire chooses a candidate. Oh, who will it be? Oh, probably Bernie Sanders. Yeah, I would agree, Brandon. Yeah, circumcision for infants should be banned. I mean, I'm circumcised, but I didn't get a choice in the matter. I think it should be left up to each individual. I think it's a slightly unnecessary procedure. You know, it's basically just for Oprah to have more foreskins for her face cream bullshit. I'll tell you what, though, no matter what magical face cream that old witch has been using, it's obviously not working because she looks ugly and has since the 1970s. So, yeah, Jeb will beat his children if he loses, which is likely. Oh, the worst. No, who would the worst be? Of the people still in the running. I got to think about that for a second. Probably Jeb. Jeb would be the worst. We've already seen what Bushes can do. We've had 2 Bushes as president. One was a one-term disaster, caused an international incident with one of our closest allies, the Japanese. He ate some sushi and then puked all over the prime minister. He was a complete moron. He also didn't finish the job in Iraq. He was a dumbass. And then W, come on. You know, just because people don't like Obama, and I don't like Obama, I don't approve of him, Doesn't mean that I look back and say, oh, well, the W years were great. No, W was a screwball. The reason I don't like Obama is he continued many of those same failed policies. Gitmo's still open. We're still in Iraq. You know, people complaining about Trump or Cruz saying, yeah, waterboarding's fine. You think they don't waterboard people still? Of course they do. No, Jeb's not gay. He's just really, really awkward. People, I mean, if you think Rubio's robotic, Jeb's robotic too. The funny thing is he's this really tall, buff-looking dude, like he could be a football player or something. He's not like woefully out of shape like Christie, but he took a few good gut punches from Trump in the last debate, just like Rubio did from Christie. It was funny because I hate Chris Christie, but I had to applaud him after he tore into Rubio. That was monumentally great. I loved it. Oh, it was so awesome. Seeing Rubio stutter and look confused. I mean, I thought Chris Christie was going to have a stroke. Honestly, the way that he was looking sideways at him with that confused look on his face was better than anything Christie was actually saying. Because you could tell, not only did he know he had caught one of the front runner opponents who usually speaks fairly well off guard, completely off guard. He was wondering why he kept making the same mistake. He did it 4 times in a row. That's why I think Rubio, who would otherwise have come in second here, I think he's going to get nudged down by Kasich. Yeah, let me check the results actually here. I don't know. I'm going to have to use a different site, I think, because this live blog doesn't appear to actually be live, or their writer's just really slow. Fuck, I could have made like 10 blog posts in that same period of time. Let me, let's see. New Hampshire results live. Type in one-handed here. Here's, oh, Oregon Live has it. Yeah. I use a bunch of ad blocking and script blocking software, so, let's see. Oh, wait, 3:50 p.m. Exit polls. Exit polls indicate the top issues for New Hampshire Republicans, as for Republicans, are government spending and terrorism. Well, on terrorism, Trump leads everybody by double digits. So that's good for him. Government spending, I think an argument could be made for him or Cruz probably there. But Cruz, he's been down badly in New Hampshire. It's not even anything like Iowa. He's been declining for a lot longer, and he never rose up nearly as high. New Hampshire voters, Iowa, the majority of those self-identifying as Republicans in Iowa, more than 50% are evangelicals. It's a very religious state. In New Hampshire, it's less than 25%. They're more on par with Vermont. We're the most atheistic state. I think New Hampshire is number 2. And as for irreligion, it's the vast majority of people in New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine. This is the most irreligious part of the country, northern New England. People here don't care about religion. Because if you knew what our weather was like, you wouldn't be religious either. You wouldn't think that there was a God. Gotta make that joke. Income inequality, fairness, and the economy and jobs are the top issues for Democrats. Case in point, another reason I don't expect the Democrats to win this election. They are focusing on the economy that is actually doing, it's mediocre, but it's improved somewhat. It's not as major an issue in people's minds. It's a decent issue. Right now, more people are worried about really the border. They're worried about ISIS. You know, think what you will. I personally choose to think ISIS is not a particularly large threat. They're killing people over there. As long as we shelter ourselves from the fight and don't get involved, we're not in any real danger. We saw what's happened. We saw with the Garland shooting, one fucking mall cop aired out the terrorist. In San Bernardino, it would have ended the same way if they had guns there, but nobody was armed because fucking California's cucked. Warren's difficult choice. Oh, yeah, Elizabeth Warren is holding back on endorsement. I'm going to take a wild guess here on Elizabeth Warren. She's a progressive. She's going to endorse Sanders. She's waiting to see how he performs in New Hampshire. When he inevitably wins, she'll probably endorse him. She'll put her weight behind him in hopes of bumping him up in South Carolina. What town am I in? Rutland. Yeah, Viva Rut Vegas. We're sort of the bastard child of the state of Vermont. We're the more conservative part of Vermont. We're more conservative because people here, because the industry in Rutland was like marble, rail, some forestry, farming. That all left because, you know, who mines stone anymore here in Rutland? We have some crushed marble that we sell, and that's about all. Once the jobs dried up and it started shrinking, people switched to being conservatives because they didn't want to pay high taxes. It does. I mean, people in Burlington that are making six figures, they don't care if their taxes are high. Here in Rutland, it's working class. This is the working class gut of Vermont. We're more conservative here because we feel the impact of the high tax policies a lot more. It's actually funny, though. Despite the fact that we spend a lot less on our education here in this part of the state locally, it's mostly handled by the state. We actually have pretty damn good rankings. The school I went to was, I think, number 4 in the state. It's pretty good. It's world-class education. It's on par with what you'd get in a place like Switzerland. It is helpful. I do support the schools. I don't have a problem. I know that a lot of the politicians here talk about, oh, the teachers' unions are strangling us all. Well, it does get results, honestly. I don't have a big problem with it. Yeah, but I'm going to... Oh, yeah, the NFL. I didn't even watch the Super Bowl. I didn't give a fuck. Sports are gay. I was going to upload, the center field cover that I did a long time ago. I didn't have the original file. I did redo it, not to my own satisfaction. Then I started getting sick right as I was going to redo it. So I'm like, well, fuck this. I had to do Marco Roboto. But I'm not a fan of sports. Don't care about football. Don't care about baseball. Let's check here. Are we getting any results in yet? Of course not. These sites are so slow. I would use Twitter, but I think it would eat up too much bandwidth, honestly. We'll see. No, that goes from newest to oldest. Hell, the last update they had here was at 350. Yeah, thanks, Oregon. Thanks. Your media is really, really stellar here. Let's check the news tab. Everyone's still doing exit poll analysis here. Let's see if Patch... Bernie Sanders favored. No shit. I hope Bernie Sanders gives a truly resounding, crushing defeat to Hillary Clinton. After the shit she pulled in Iowa, it's just like Cruz. One of the reasons I want him to come outside of the top 3 is I just want him to suffer. Because really, that was not really called for. What he did to Carson. I don't even like Carson. I'm not fooled by his quiet guy persona. But, pulling that on anyone, even like a shitty candidate is, that's just underhanded. And he's ineligible. It's funny. The people of Iowa voted for a candidate who's not even eligible to serve as the president of the United States. I'm sorry, folks. Cruz is not a natural born citizen. You can think that we should amend that part of the Constitution. You can think that it's xenophobic, bigoted, sexist, and horrible, but that's the way that it is. Ted Cruz is not eligible to serve in that capacity. He's eligible to be a senator. Apparently, the people there, I believe in Texas, like him as a senator, but he's from Canada. He was born in Alberta. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Artie. Depersonalization is when things around you don't quite feel real. I did have that after my overdose on spice. Pro tip to people. One reason that I haven't uploaded the rest of the trip reports that I promised people is it really is a touchy issue for me. I almost died on a legal substance. I don't suffer any effects from it now. Like, I feel back to normal like I was before I started using any drugs at all. I like sobriety. I don't have a problem. No, it's not permanent. It's not permanent. Trust me. Focus on something else. And if you're taking any antipsychotics, think about stopping them, because they give that to people with depersonalization to prevent PTSD. I found that when I stopped using the prescription that was supposed to prevent post-traumatic stress disorder, I felt fine. I felt 1,000 times better when I stopped that. I didn't suddenly start hallucinating or relapsing or anything. I felt better. Getting rid of depersonalization, just try to be calm. Realize that the depersonalization is an illusion and go forward from there. It helps if you focus on something worthy, a form of work or something, like I do with my writing. That's what I do. And now I'm making quite a bit of money actually writing and editing manuscripts from the medieval. Some of these things are in Old English. I'm working on the Liber Salomonis right now, by the way. It's about the most difficult. It's more difficult than the Petit Albert, which is in French. It was easier for me to edit my way through that than it is this work. It's going to take twice as long. Oh, results are starting to come in? Yeah, well, until you get at least like 10 or 20% in, you can't read anything into it, because that just means that a few of the small counties have come in. We had this problem in Iowa. If the first ones had been indicative, then the result would have been different. Yeah, this is still not updating. I'm not fucking surprised. Here, the New York Times, you know, they always lie, but still. See if we, let's see. Nearly half of Republican voters were late deciders. Good for Trump if the exit polls are any indication. Also good for Kasich. Democrats rate income inequality and economy is most important. Well, then I guess they're voting for Sanders. I'll respect him. He does care about the poor. I think he's wrong on how to handle the issue, but he does care. I think he genuinely does. Ben Carson's campaign makes clear he is going to South Carolina. Why do you think he's making sure to point that out on primary night? Probably hoping to prevent Cruz from stealing some votes again. I feel sorry for... Did you see Carson at the fucking debate there? He couldn't even hear his name being called and was just sort of standing there. I feel actually it was a little bit cringeworthy, honestly. Again, I'm not taking in by his soft-toned approach, but, you know, really, he is getting a raw deal from some of the people there, especially after he was briefly a front runner. Very funny. Fiorina moment. Where are people getting, link me where you're getting any of these results, because I'm not seeing anything. Put a link in the chat. Why would Rand Paul? Well, Rand Paul probably won't endorse anyone. I don't expect him to endorse anyone. He might endorse whoever the final... Yeah, I know, Google. I need a link because I'm not seeing whatever other people are seeing. I use a bunch of ad blocking software. My results usually aren't the same as other people's. Live tweets, New Hampshire primary. Yeah, but they must have... Well, let me... Yeah, I'll do that. I use NoScript, Ghost3, and AdBlock Plus, so my results sometimes are a bit different. Let's see. I wonder what's trending. Martin Shkreli. Who fucking is named Shkreli? Let me see. New Hampshire primary. Yeah, link me the results here. New Hampshire exit polls. Yeah, I've seen them 1,000 times. Only 16% of Democratic voters said they felt betrayed by the Democratic Party. Well, that's rather strange. All eyes on Trump. Why is Kasich polling better in New Hampshire? 3 in 10 describe themselves as very conservative. Here's someone confused. Senator Sanders is winning in the New Hampshire primary. Mild stroke. No, that's what Hillary had. We all know it. People complaining about Mitch McConnell. People stumping for Trump. I'm still not seeing any particular link to these results that people are seeing. Decision Desk. Oh, okay. Let me check that out. Decision Desk HQ. Oh, goody. Yeah, see, if you paid attention to this, it's saying Hillary has 71% of the votes. That's the problem with trusting the very early results. There are going to be several 100,000 votes. You're talking about a couple thousand of those. That's not representative. I'm sure that Hillary and Trump would be very pleased if they were, though. Yeah. Here, let me allow this site so that hopefully it'll update live. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, Ben Carson won a county. Ooh, oh, he must be happy. Oh, wait, that's Kasich. Never mind. That one that Trump did win down there that's giving him those votes, though, that's a Romney. That area went heavily for Romney, who won New Hampshire fairly handily. I wouldn't... actually, it's not outside of the realm of possibility that Trump could break 50%. If he does, it's all anyone will be talking about. But Kasich being down in 5th, I don't think that that's going to hold. Still saying that he probably will win 2nd place. If not, he'll probably be in the top 3. It would actually be a little bit strange if the people of New Hampshire don't take kindly to Kasich and put him in the top 3, considering he's the only one who spent all of his time in one friggin' state. He's basically the New Hampshire candidate at this point. He decided basically to sit Iowa out and came in, I think, 6th in Iowa. If you register an independent, can you vote in the primaries in Massachusetts? I believe. You'll have to Google it and see if it's an open primary. See, here I can vote for whoever I want. I just show up and tell them which ballot I want, and then I fill it out. I'll probably primary for the Republicans because Sanders is going to crush Hillary here. Like, I mean, it's his home state. He's going to win like 80% of the vote, so I don't need to worry about supporting him. But yeah, I'm an independent. I primaried for Obama in 2008, and then I primaried for Ron Paul in 2012 because I got tired of Obama, but I hated Romney just as much. So I just said, oh, it's Ron Paul time for me. He did surprisingly well, you know, for a third-tier candidate. I liked Ron Paul. I still do. Some of his views are screwy. I don't think we need the gold standard. Yeah, Rubio could come in 4th. It is a possibility. We have a 4-way tie in New Hampshire for the 2nd and 3rd place sort of standing. Rubio, Cruz, Jeb, Yeb, and then Kasich. I'm saying I expect Kasich to be in that 2nd or maybe 3rd slot, and Rubio to be in the other. Cruz probably 4th and Jeb 5th, which means Jeb gets 2 5th place wins in a row. That's how he'll construe it. Oh, well, we outperformed expectations. We got 9% of the vote, came in 5th. It's exactly how he'll frame it. Ron Paul endorsed Ted. Yeah, for senator. Well, yeah, Palin endorsed him for senator too, but now she's endorsing Trump for the presidency. Things are malleable. A lot of the people who liked Cruz abandoned him. They abandoned him for either Trump or for standing with the establishment. Cruz could take 2nd. He could take 3rd. He could take 4th. He could take 5th. It's impossible. That's why I didn't like with Iowa. I was more certain. It's almost impossible to tell which of these candidates is going to come out on top. But I'm going to keep on the decision desk here. Oh, yeah. Now Sanders is ahead with 54%. Is Trump still ahead? Yeah, 53. Man, if he finished with 53% of the vote at the end of the night, then he'd certainly have reason to celebrate. Key pro tip again. Remember, Romney lost Iowa, won New Hampshire, and became nominated. McCain lost Iowa, won New Hampshire, and became nominated. Trump lost Iowa. He's probably going to win New Hampshire. I expect him to be nominated. I don't think that there's a vast insider conspiracy to stop Trump. I think it's more minor conspiracies by people like Cruz to try to stop him because they realize he has the momentum he needs to become the nominee. But if he wins New Hampshire, and then especially if he wins South Carolina, there's really no way forward for any of the other candidates to stop him. His national polling will shoot up probably above 40 or 45. Some of the others who drop out, like Carson, would probably endorse him. You might see some other people start to jump on board. He's self-funding. He doesn't have to worry about running out of money. It's likely that we'll see a President Trump in the White House because, again, the Democrats are especially weak right now. It's not so much a political pendulum. It's not a political pendulum. It's just a lot of the people that are pissed off at Obama are pissed off at him because he's like W. While those people are looking at what Trump's saying about his own party, which would otherwise be electoral suicide, and they're saying, oh, well, yeah, he seems like the candidate for me. Again, if the exit polling is remotely accurate at all, then Trump has managed to gobble up most of the independent voters in all of New Hampshire. That could push him up to 50. I'm not going to expect it. I think he'll finish around 30, 35, but he could. And if he does, I mean, Rubio's gone. Rubio's completely blunted because he no longer looks viable. Especially if he doesn't finish in 3rd, I expect him to. But if he falls to 4th, I mean, how the hell is he supposed to justify remaining in the race? He'll be like Jeb 2.0. A Trump versus Sanders ticket wouldn't be bad, honestly, because you have two people that are, completely outside of the establishment, and I think honestly scare the establishment. Sanders wants people to have more free stuff because he cares about them. Trump wants to get rid of regulations and PACs because he cares about people. And I think they do honestly care. I think they have totally different ways of going about it. The hyper-partisan climate contributes to people looking at one or the other and saying, oh, well, they're just terrible. You have people saying, well, Sanders is a communist. He'd rip our country apart. They don't understand. He does care about people. He's just delusional. They look at Trump and they say, oh, well, he's just a fucking bigot. He hates the United States. He hates everyone. And they don't realize he cares too. Of course, he's a corporatist. He's a corporate leader. He's a billionaire. Of course, he cares about corporate interests. He just doesn't get told what to do by them because he's too busy telling others what to do using his own money. We're going to keep up to date with this. Bernie Sanders beating out Hillary 55-42. Yeah, see, right now, Jeb Bush is in second, but will that lead hold? There's no way to tell. It would be kind of funny if Rubio came in like fourth or fifth after his robotic debate. Can I claim credit for casting meme magic at him with my music? Who knows? Sanders isn't too old. Sanders is about the same age as Hillary and Trump. Yeah. I mean, he's already been in politics for most of his life, and he looks about the same that he did back when I saw him debate Rich Tarrant. He's always looked basically the same. It's like when Sanders turned like 40, he magically became an old, grumpy man, and then he stopped aging, and he just keeps looking the same forever. Maybe socialism has made him immortal. Maybe he's got some Bolshevik magic there, some tome of Bolshevik magic, and that's why he's 100,000 in debt buying his magic spell book, and he's enchanted himself to be alive forever. We'll never be rid of him. He'll be like FDR and have 4 terms or something before Trump revives himself with dark magic and stops him or something. Yeah. I wouldn't want to live to be 150. That'd be just fucking terrible. You'd be like a mummy by that point. I wouldn't want to be young forever either. Eventually you'd get demented somehow. Something would happen in life that would be completely soul crushing and you just off yourself. Number one cause of death would become suicide if people lived forever. But my candidate, my slogan would be vote for me and you can go to hell. Hell is the good place. Checking again. Yeah, Sanders at 60 versus 38 for Clinton. These numbers are going to jump around notably for some time. But looking at this map, I will tell you one thing. The counties that are reporting in for the Democrats, those ones in the north that you're seeing on Decision Desk are extremely, extremely rural. They're more religious. They're more right-wing. That bigger one at the bottom is very liberal, very blue. That's the liberal part of New Hampshire. If Sanders is getting that much support in both areas, that 60 may hold. He may end up with 60% of the vote, which would be pretty soul-crushing for Hillary because the polls showed her at, I think, 45, losing by about 10, not by 20. That could put her campaign on the skids a little bit. Will it help Sanders, again, win somewhere? Like in South Carolina, where the minority voters will come out in huge droves for Hillary? Probably not, but Nevada, maybe. Yeah, if he wins Nevada, if he loses South Carolina but wins Nevada, then it's gonna be a long slugfest on the Democratic side. Trump's still in the lead with 42%. Again, though, this early on in the counting, we have to assume that any candidate that's ahead by a conspicuous amount is only ahead because the places that reported in first happen to be enclaves of heavy support for them. Otherwise, we can make a fool of ourselves. In Iowa, of course, you saw that the first results actually stayed somewhat stable. Ted Cruz's early lead actually grew by a couple of points. If that were to happen here, you'd expect Trump at 45 and Sanders at like 70. I would love to see that, by the way. I want to see Bernie just absolutely fucking dominate that old bitch. It's funny that they've got an other column, though, for the Democrats. 2% of the Democrats have voted for other. No word on who that is. Oh, did you hear? Michael Bloomberg, that billionaire anti-gunner, might be entering the race. Yes, Carrie, you're alive. But what was it? Why did I get here? I can't talk religion right now. The results are coming in. Just you must wait. Yeah, Bloomberg may get into the race. Can you spell bad news for the Democrats? As though the vote wasn't already split enough between progressives and mainstream Democrats, now you've got someone who's essentially a blue dog except for the gun issue. It's not going to take away any votes from the Republicans. No Republican is going to vote for somebody who says, yeah, we should outlaw all guns in the country. Michael Bloomberg, that is. The billionaire, corporatist. He's sort of like the left-wing Trump, I suppose. But on other things, he's sort of a blue dog Democrat. He's not exactly on board with all the big fiscal spending. He's more of an open corporate candidate. So I hope Bloomberg does get in. It'll only fuck Hillary harder. I don't think Bernie's supporters would really go for him. He's sort of the anti-Bernie, actually. He'd probably be siphoning Hillary, really bring her down. What happened to Jim Webb? He dropped out. He decided not to continue. He was talking about a possible independent run, and he could start an independent run before Super Tuesday. Bloomberg apparently mentioned if Hillary doesn't win New Hampshire, he'll start thinking about it more seriously. Well, Hillary's not going to win New Hampshire, folks. Even if she rigged the vote, the turnout for Bernie is going to be so astronomically high. I don't think it's going to happen. Let me refresh this in case there are any new results here. I don't know how often it self-refreshes. Still 60-38 for Bernie. Bernie Sanders, he's the ice cream man. And Trump ahead by 40%. Jeb still clinging to second, but John Kasich moves into third. If Jeb does come in second place, he'll be the next Rubio. Rubio will slide down, and then people will be talking about, oh, well, Jeb is the one that will supplant Donald Trump. I don't think so. I think people are done with the Bush dynasty. That's one thing that's hurting Hillary. Used to be, if you had the name Clinton, you were kind of respected, not necessarily trusted, but respected in politics. It's not the 90s anymore. Again, Bubba didn't do anything specifically that made the 90s good. It was because the USSR, our major competitor, collapsed. It's like the 50s. It wasn't Ike's policies that helped us through the 50s. It was the fact that all the industry in Europe had been bombed. People didn't want to talk about it then. They heavily supported Ike. Ike and Clinton are sort of similar when you think about the way things were going, sort of the feel-good era. Costs are low, and there's lots of jobs. Things are, kind of dicey on the racial front, both in the 90s and the 50s, but generally peaceful for the most part outside of a few cities. People had their video games, or back in the 50s, they had their, uranium glazeware. Yeah, that was really good for you. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, I mean, it's not any of their policies. I don't mind Ike either. His statement against the military-industrial complex was great. Ultimately, he lost, and we did have a military-industrial complex. I think he was an all-American sort of person. A little bit butcherous in the European theater at times towards the captives of war. But then again, who wasn't? Better than the fucking Russians. Yeah, Hillary could very well have a stroke. Yeah, exactly. Clinton wasn't a peacenik. Look at what he one of his field commanders, that remind me of the name. It was that one retard, wasn't Wesley Clark, I think. Some retarded idiot fucking general almost caused World War III in Yugoslavia by trying to invade an airport held by the Russians. And some lowly field commander held back his men from actually carrying out the order. Probably saved the fucking world. All the other times that World War III was narrowly averted, the Russians somehow were responsible for averting it, or in one case, I think the Finns. That was the only time the United States actually sort of held its breath and kept from firing off a nuke, was when one idiot general almost decided to cause World War III, and some field commander, probably nobody even knows their fucking name because of classification, said, no, we're not going to be invading the Russian airport. I think that might be a bad idea. I think they might fire back. They might even radio home and say, oh, we need air support. Yeah, that fucking retarded. Just think, these are the people that run the world. These are the people with their fingers on the nuclear triggers. And you ask why I'm pessimistic about our chances of averting nuclear war. We've had some close shaves already. Sanders still at 60.9, Trump still at 40.2. But again, I mean, remember, there's a total of, really not that many votes. I think a little less than 6,000 votes so far counted for the Democrats, and I don't even think anywhere near that for the Republicans. Looks more like really quick math here, about 4,000 votes. So, yeah, you can't read too much into the results so far. It looks like we're getting results for the different parties at different locations at different times, which is odd. So far, though, Trump appears to be dominating the southern part of the state. You got to realize New Hampshire, one thing that Trump has talked about a lot in his speeches is how New Hampshire has been hammered jobs-wise. I wish he'd come to Vermont and say the same thing, because we're the twin states and we've suffered exactly the same fate. But he is right. Honestly, Trump is completely right on that. The job situation in northern New England has been decimated by these free trade deals. We started seeing that problem after NAFTA, and it's only gotten worse. The TPP is going to crush us out of existence. There's a reason why I'm actively planning not to stay in northern New England for an extended period of time, why I'm planning to move somewhere where it's lower cost, where there's a few more jobs. Even if I'm self-employed, like having a lower tax rate, that helps everybody, you know, whether you're self-employed or not. I'd rather live in the Mid-Atlantic. Yeah. No, I haven't played Fallout 4 yet. I can't afford a PS4 at the moment. I'm too busy. I'm too concerned with other costs, one being my garden for the spring. I'm going to spend about $100 on like garden soil and humus and stuff like that, honestly. Also, my partner's planning to come over here, so I'm going to need money for that. Because you need money. Go out to eat. Yellow Deli. If you ever are in Vermont, if you ever come to Rutland, go to the Yellow Deli. It's the best place to eat. I strongly recommend it. For those of you who like hippie art and hippie-ish food, but really, really filling food, you know, really cheap for the portions, you get a fucking veggie burger there, and it's like 2 pounds of veggie burger. You can't even eat it in one sitting, no matter how high your metabolism is. You know, you'd have to get that 1,000-pound man in there to chow one down. I'm not moving to Alaska. No place colder than here. Yes, my partner is extremely beautiful. Extremely. Yeah, probably get to see her on video at some point in the future. She might be watching now. I'm not actually sure. I think her internet's down at the moment. Yeah. Yeah, I'll do a voodoo video at some point, or something on generally like the Creole Cajun stuff from Louisiana and Gumbo Land, basically. No, partner as in woman. Oh yeah, let me check. What are the new results? Oh God, how often do I have to refresh this friggin' page? It's 2016, for Christ's sake. Yeah, Trump appears to be holding on to. Oh God, can you imagine if Trump does get 40% and everyone else is like shoved way down there? Oh man, that would hurt these other candidates for him to get that much. That would be, I think that would be higher than Romney's total in a much less crowded field. Because Romney was only facing off against Santorum, Gingrich, and Paul. Were there even any other candidates in the running by New Hampshire? I don't even think there were. So that was a fairly thin field. That was closer to what the Democratic field is right now. I think Romney barely broke into the upper 30s in New Hampshire when he won. I think Gingrich and Santorum were each somewhere in the 20s, and then Ron Paul was in the high teens or something. That would actually be a fairly commanding win. Remember, New Hampshire has been the bellwether of the Republican nomination for several cycles now. Iowa has become more and more right-wing and evangelical. It's been overwhelmed by the Tea Party. It's no longer a proper... There's no reason for them even to retain it as the first state. New Hampshire should be the first state. Iowa is no longer indicative of who the Republican nominee will be. The last two times they went for Huckabee and Santorum. This time they went for Cruz, who I predict is utterly unelectable. Something like 25% of Republicans acknowledge the fact that he's not even eligible. Well, that's a sizable proportion of people who can't bring themselves to vote for him. It'd be suicide for the Republicans to nominate him. New Hampshire's been the bellwether. It's like South Carolina. They went for Gingrich in 2012 as opposed to going for Romney. Gingrich won it handily. You know, he's sort of he looks like a tobacco plantation owner. He's got the big gut and the weird accent and sort of the sparse gray hair and stuff. He just looks like the sort of dude, you put him in overalls and you put him in Dixieland, and he looks like the sort of person who refers to the help and puts people in the cotton field or in the tobacco field. That's what Newt Gingrich appears to me to be like. It's no surprise he won South Carolina. This time around, though, Trump's expected to win there. And if he wins big in New Hampshire or even wins it all, that's going to help him. More votes are starting to come in. John Kasich is now in second. I expect him to hold that position. I think Kasich's probably going to take second. For the Democrats, it remains basically unmoved. The other column is the one losing out now. So far, of all the counties fully counted, Sanders has won all of them except for one, which went for Hillary. Let's mouse over these. Let's see if there's any sort of pattern here that I can tell. Let's see. This is more indicative of how the centrist. Yeah, he's winning by 53% over 42, with 100% reporting in the same larger, more coastal area that Trump has handily won. Trump won it with what percentage here, if it'll say? With 52%. With 100% reporting. That coastal area is more centrist or left-leaning. These northern areas are more conservative. For a self-proclaimed socialist to be sweeping up these northern counties that are more rural, a bit more evangelical, not even along the Vermont border, but further east, that's not good news for Hillary Clinton. I've spent a lot of time in New Hampshire. I've sort of seen the sort of things that you see, the sort of situation that's there. I would assume Hillary will win some of these central areas around Concord and places like that, maybe down into Manchester. But if she can't compete in that northern region, really where people don't necessarily respond positively to socialism, I think she's going to have a terrible night. She'll probably underperform. It looks like she is already. She's under 40. I think the polling had her at 45. Actually, let me check that. Let me check the tracking poll. I'm not paying attention to chat right now, so I'm not trying to ignore anyone. I'm just trying to get a look at the. Oh, I don't want the whole nomination. I just want New Hampshire. Yeah, in the last polling, she had 41 or so, and that's actually up from what she was at. And she appears to be a few points below that. So I don't think Hillary is going to be a force to be reckoned with tonight in New Hampshire. I think. So wait, what is this? If Sanders is at 60-ish, yeah, Sanders is overperforming by about 5 points right now. Judging from the number of counties and their sort of diverse population scattered around the state. If that holds and Hillary really is doing that badly and continues to do that badly, she's going to be absolutely crushed underfoot. Trump's still holding on to a 34% lead. With this much counted, it's only 2% of precincts. But if that remains stable at all, then it would be a good night. Wait. Oh, we just got an update. Yeah, Trump's still at 33. Kasich has jumped up. Expected, honestly. Kasich has spent a lot of time in the more remote areas. I mean, who else are people going to fucking vote for in those areas? Other than the one person who bothered to show up. Jeb is in third right now. You know, it's still only 2% of the precincts reporting, but it's still pretty funny. I imagine that Marco Rubio in fifth place currently is a little bit nervous, especially since Christie's not far behind him. Can you imagine if Rubio takes sixth? Oh, man. If Chris Christie suddenly has a surge, like he has one little pocket of support that just edges him a few votes ahead of Marco Rubio, we probably will see Rubio have a stroke. Yeah. People have devolved, it appears, into a religious conversation in chat. I don't support anarchism. It's a great system until you realize it can't work. It devolves into mob rule and further into totalitarianism. It's sort of like Plato's movement of political systems, from a democracy, or as we would call it, a meritocracy, into a direct democracy, thence into an oligarchy, and finally into a tyranny, and then back to a democracy as revolutions occur, or as time passes. Anarchism descends into mob rule. The people with the big guns end up ruling. They form an oligarchy. Eventually it becomes more tyrannical. It gets overthrown by anarchists and devolves back into anarchy over and over again. Rubio is on tons of drugs. Yeah, I think he might be snorting a line, honestly. He did actually look like he might have been under the effects of something during that debate. On the way he talks, it looks like he's coked up. I haven't seen any white streaks under his nose, but he does look like the typical 40-something midlife crisis party boy. There are some people saying that he was caught by the police in sort of a drug, dope, gay party area when he was younger. I don't think he's gay, judging from his comments on how it's a sin. I know that's not really indicative. We've had like anti-gay senators and stuff before outed as homosexuals, and I don't really care if he's gay, by the way. I mean, I'm not going to vote for him either way, but he does seem like the sort of person who would snort a line. Honestly, snorting lines with Marco Rubio. Yeah, he might have been on Adderall. I've seen people on Adderall. I went to college. Yeah, they do kind of act like that. Yeah. I'm not a fan of Rubio. I mean, he pretends to be a centrist. He's not. He's just a corporatist. Well, you know, he might as well have a D after his name. He's the same as Hillary. If Bernie doesn't win, Trump's the second best viable option. Well, I'm voting for Gary Johnson. Yeah, but Bernie would be more viable in a general election, despite being a socialist. Hillary, it just came out. The FBI finally has formally announced that it's conducting an actual investigation regarding her email servers. For months and months, Hillary and Abedin and the Being Liberal page and Salon and everyone else said, oh, there's no actual investigation here. They're just looking into it to make sure everything's kosher, but there's no investigation. We now know that's not the case. Hillary and the others knew beforehand that it wasn't the case. Another Hillary lie. We know they're investigating. We know she had top secret info on her server, and it was top secret at the time it was sent. Classified information was stripped of its classified heading and sent by an intern from her server. She broke the law. She should be in prison, just like people like W and Obama for violating the Constitution should be in Gitmo. That's my opinion. It also happens to be the Constitution, which, you know, the government has less and less respect for. But yeah, she should be in prison for what she did. If you as a private citizen had a server and you had classified government info on it and you weren't supposed to, you'd be thrown in prison. The fact that she was serving as the Secretary of State doesn't mean anything. It was a private server. It was not a government server in a government building or anything like that. It was her own private home server. It's illegal to do that. It's just as illegal as if I had a bunch of classified shit on my computer. It's exactly the same. That's why I don't believe that she would win a general election. And I think Obama's not going to shelter her either. I think she hates her fucking guts. Cultural Marxism. No, Nixon didn't get sent to jail, but he did get forced out of office. And the Watergate break-in was mild compared to what Hillary did. Nixon was practically honest compared to somebody like Hillary. Strange as though that may seem. It's funny. Back then, politicians were held just enough to account, so that him conducting one break-in sort of inside job got him impeached and almost removed by force from office. He had to resign, of course. Clinton got impeached for getting a blowjob, though he didn't get removed from office. And there was never any risk of that. I mean, and remember, that was Gingrich, again, the plantation tobacco farm fucker. But, you know, Hillary does this and her fans give her a pass. That's just the hyper-partisan climate we're in. Most Republicans abandoned Nixon after it became clear he had betrayed the people's trust and was just a blind egotist. But now people practically worship Hillary, even though she's exactly the same, just because she has a fucking vagina. And then for Bill to come out and say, oh, well, all of these sexist critics of Hillary Clinton. I don't care. I mean, I would criticize Bernie for his shortcomings. I criticize people like Cruz or Rubio. They don't have vaginas. I'm not sexist against penises. Yes, Bobby Jones, I do. I don't care if they use Stalin as a promo code. Stalin's a funny guy. No, our criminal justice system isn't racist. It's just more corrupt in places where minorities happen to be more prevalent. Big cities. You have a city with 1 million people, the government feels less accountable because the odds that you have enough power to get them out of office on your own are a lot lower than if you're living somewhere in the boondocks with 50 fucking people in a village. If a village of 50 people has a corrupt sheriff, chances are somebody knows about it and can convince 26 of them to vote to get him removed from their position. You try doing that in a place like New York City, it's impossible. Also, ironically enough, it has to do with unions. The police have unions, you know. The Democrats never want to talk about that union. Oh, Zach Black mentioned me? When did he do that? I didn't know Satanic International ever talked about me. Papa John's, I've never eaten there, honestly. But yeah, when did Satanic International mention me? This is news to me. Zach Black is Satanic International. My IQ is 132, by the way, or 136, depending on who you ask. One of his I didn't realize that he had mentioned me. Well, that's good for me, I guess. I hope it was a positive mention and not, oh, that fucking retarded ex-Satanist that became a stupid pagan. Satanism's usually atheistic for the most part. There are some theistic Satanists. I don't really agree with them. All right, let's see. Yeah, Sanders is still holding on to a significant lead. Declined a couple. That's more in line with the polling, 57 to 58 to like 41 to 42-ish. That's more in line with the polling, but still, there are only 2 counties here, it appears, or voting districts, I should say, where Clinton actually won. Again, terrible news for her. I mean, if his support is that widespread, we're getting more than a few clumps of areas in here. Oh, that's the Concord area. Oh, shit. Sanders is dominating in Concord, other than in Ward 8. Now, that's something you wouldn't have convinced. That's like an old-timey sort of traditionalist Democratic stronghold. That's actually really weird that he would dominate the Concord area. I wouldn't have expected that. And that down there, I believe, is Manchester. Oh, more coming in. Just as I'm speaking, yeah, still 57-41. If Sanders is doing that well in the Concord region, then I think he's going to sweep basically everything up. And Trump is still in the lead with about 32. That would be above his long-term polling. I think he's at 28 or 29. If he outperforms here, it's good news for Trump because it means that the exit polling was correct in predicting that a lot of the independents swung for him at the and a lot of the late deciders. You got to realize people who made up their minds some time ago probably are more in line with somebody like Rubio or Jeb. Whereas apparently, according to every exit poll from all of the different networks, Trump gobbled up the independents, which can vote for either party. They also appear to have swung heavily to Sanders, which is why he's currently dominating everything. I see Trump is picking up most of Concord. That's good news for Trump. That would be an establishment stronghold. Rubio's got 2 of the wards. Trump appears to have the rest of them, the wards of Concord. Again, that's really good news for Donald Trump at the moment, if I can read this correctly, because that should be a Rubio stronghold if he was doing well at all. I think a lot of Rubio's fans must have abandoned him. We're at 5%, 5.6% reporting, and Rubio's in 5th. Once you get 5 to 10% reporting, that's basically the order that you're going to be left with, give or take a little, unless people are really close together, because it tends to be a fairly good sampling of the population as a whole and how they voted. I'm seeing a lot of Donald Trump areas that I wouldn't have expected, honestly, to go to Trump if Rubio hadn't suffered a catastrophic loss. And that's what I'm seeing here. Rubio still, his aggregate was at 2nd place in the last round of polling, and he's right now in 5th. And he's not far ahead of Christie. Christie could theoretically jump that less than 3-point gap. Now we're at 8.3 reporting. So at this point, we can call the Democratic side for Sanders, because he's winning basically everything. So Sanders has won New Hampshire by a rather large margin, about in line or a little ahead of where he was polling at. Congrats to Bernie, my state senator, even if I can't vote for you in the general election. You're better than Hillary. And you could probably call it for Trump right now, unless something really weird happens, because you're almost now it's at 8.3% reporting. He's still ahead at like 32. That's ahead. Again, let me check the RCP for New Hampshire for the GOP here. Yeah, Trump was polling. His low was 28 and his high was 34. So that's about in line at what he was polling at. But Rubio was at around 14 to 15. And this has Rubio at 10. So it's obvious that his decline was true. Kasich was at 13.5. He's at 18 here. So it appears that the exit polls were probably correct. Kasich appears to have slid into second. This is about as good for Donald Trump as it could possibly be, by the way, to have Kasich riding on his tail like that, because he has no national ground game and can't compete in any of the future states very easily. But he has just edged out at least one of Trump's main competitors from the top three. This is great news for Trump. He couldn't ask for a better night if this stays stable. Jeb in third, but not far ahead of Cruz. Again, Jeb was catastrophically behind in Iowa. Where was Jeb on here? 11.5, and he's currently at 12. So that doesn't really help Jeb much. It puts him in the top three, but it doesn't give him a win, and it's not far ahead of where he was polling at anyway. And where was Cruz at? Cruz was at about almost at 12. He's in fourth with about 11, so about on par, a little bit less. Where was Christie? I think Christie's significantly ahead. He was polling at around 5.8. Now he's almost at 8%, though. He's actually within striking distance, theoretically, of Rubio. John Gilmore, 6 votes. Yeehaw! Yeah, he's significantly behind the other column. I'm wondering who those other voters went for. You know, who can say? It would be funny if someone requested a Republican ballot and then went in and under the other column they put like Bernie Sanders. That would be hilarious. Or they go in with a Democratic ballot and vote for Trump or something like that. But yeah, it looks like Trump has won New Hampshire most likely here. You know, unless Kasich suddenly gains 13 points, which wouldn't make sense. And Sanders has won. Sanders will win New Hampshire. Gilmore is moving up. No, he's got like 6 votes, I think. Yeah, Trump winning New Hampshire, especially with Kasich in second, is really helpful to his campaign. It gives him a win in the true bellwether state, the most important of the first 3 states, because Iowa is no longer indicative of long-term Republican or Democratic trends. Bernie kind of fucked with their system, but I mean, Ted Cruz won't be the nominee. So Iowa, the fact that Cruz won there just puts him in the same category as Huckabee circa 2008, Santorum circa 2012. People who won Iowa didn't get the nomination, but the nominee always wins New Hampshire. Trump winning in New Hampshire, especially when somebody who has no national presence has managed to deny at least one other person a top 3 slot, is great news for him. Because this makes Marco Rubio has fucked himself. He came out before and said he had a 3-2-1 plan. He was going to finish 3rd in Iowa, 2nd in New Hampshire, and 1st in South Carolina, and then he would be the nominee. But he finished 3rd in Iowa. Now he might finish 5th in New Hampshire. I expected him to take 3rd place, honestly. I didn't expect him to lose this much support in just a single day. That's terrible. I mean, Cruz is faring better than Marco Rubio. You couldn't have convinced me that that would be a likely outcome. It was obvious that Trump was probably going to win, and it appears to be roughly in line with his polling, slightly ahead possibly. Kasich, though, I predicted that Kasich would be in 2nd place, most likely. I said it was a 4-way tie for 2nd and 3rd, but Kasich had the strongest game. It appears to have amalgamated into a significant increase in his support. So it's now 8 o'clock. We've still got less than 10% of precincts reporting, but the ones that have actually reported in 100% here, for most of these that are actually showing results, they're heavily in favor of Trump and Kasich, with a few that Jeb Bush won, and they look like really rural areas, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised if Jeb slides down below Cruz and Cruz takes third, actually, though, because those look like outliers. Those look like rural farming. Barrington, well, that's Manchester Ward too. But Barrington, that's more of a farming community, I believe. That's right up near the White Mountains. But it looks like Trump has grabbed up not just the core of the state, the heavy votes of the Southeast that Romney did well in, but he's grabbing up most of Concord. Manchester hasn't reported, and when Manchester reports in, then we're going to know. If it goes for somebody like Jeb could edge out Kasich, maybe, I guess. But if it goes for Trump, he'll probably jump up to 33 or 34. Manchester area, well, Concord's one of the more important urban centers within New Hampshire. For those who don't know New Hampshire geography, the coastal area around Hampton Beach, the Concord area, the Manchester area, and then like the Lebanon area, and also to an extent, a place like down near Brattleboro, there's Keene. That has wards as well. If Keene goes like Concord did, then you would expect Trump to grab up quite a few votes there. But looking at Lebanon, Kasich did well. That's actually really strange because the Lebanon area is like really, really like Democrat hippie because it's right across from White River. It's right on the Connecticut River, right next to Vermont. It's heavily influenced by sort of our policies. Now they sort of go hand in hand, and yet it's going for Kasich, who's a little bit right of center. He's a centrist, but he's like slightly to the right of like Jeb Bush. I would have expected that to be a Rubio stronghold if he was doing well at all. Obviously, Rubio is having so far an extremely bad night. Trump is having a good night. Kasich will be the story of the night on the Republican side, though. They'll try to ignore Trump. The media doesn't like Trump, even though he drives a lot of attention, because he keeps sort of selectively denying them interviews and stuff like that. Yeah, Concord. A Vermonter doesn't pronounce them any differently. We wouldn't say Concord unless it had an E on the end. I've got a Vermont accent. I can't help it. Yeah, Netanyahu loves Hitler. It's the only way his state exists and his nuclear stockpile. But it's now 8 o'clock. I'm going to go take another brief break, use the bathroom, clear my throat, get more water. But right now, if I had to guess, I'd say it's going to be, oh, yeah, the map is finally updating, although a lot more slowly. It looks like Trump has won New Hampshire most likely, unless something, unless the vote's rigged and it changes last minute. Sanders has definitely won. He's completely crushed Hillary. She'll be sobbing. She'll be carpet munching with Aberdeen later, I suppose. But yeah, I'm going to take a brief break here because my throat's starting to get a little bit clogged up. And then I will return. So be right back here. Hitler would have voted for Sanders. Socialism. All right, I'll be right back. All right, YouTube, back to the primaries. No, I wasn't taking a shit. I was getting a bite to eat too. I've got a brown sugar pie, homemade. You take 2 pie crusts, one on top of the other, fill it with some oil and brown sugar. It's actually really, really good. But I'm going to close the live blog. It's just eating up bandwidth. That's not live either. Don't care about that. Yeah, it's basically Decision Desk is the only site worth looking at here at this point. I'm going to see if any more precincts have reported in. It's stuck at 8.6% and 8.3%. But yeah, so far it looks like, oh, wait. Wasn't that for Jeb before? Oh, that must not have completely reported in. Yeah, now Trump's won it. That was something Jeb had won. And that one's being called for Jeb with 4 votes. Oh, no, that's being called for other. What the fuck is going on with this map? Must be things aren't quite kosher here. Anyway, though, this looks basically as I expected. Trump and Kasich in first and second. That third place spot, it could move around. Cruz is within striking distance of Jeb. Not much of the vote has come in yet. It's still below 10%. Again, you got to wait till at least 10% to get a accurate picture. John Gilmore has gone from 6 to 9 votes, though, so I'm sure he's pleased. I think he suspended his campaign, though. Oh, and now that little area has suddenly become a Ted Cruz area. These keep moving around on expand. Now it's back to Trump again. I don't really understand how that's working there. But it looks like Sanders is the big winner on the Democratic side. Yeah, well, I don't have any respect for MGTOW stuff for the most part. I'm just not into that sort of thing. Yeah, but let's go back to the comments here and answer some random questions because it might be a while before any more precincts actually come in. Yeah, if a candidate has less than 10%, they're not getting shit. Never heard of Thomas Leroy. Don't know who that is. But I don't support the sort of men's rights activist bullshit because it seems that they're conflating media accounts, lurid media accounts of a few legal cases as being indicative of the entire female population. And it seems to me that the argument is essentially the same as females within third wave feminism that talk about misogyny, literally misogyny, and how men are all pigs and stuff like that. It's basically the same stuff. It's just opposite sides of the behavioral sink of Calhoun, really, when you think about it. Yeah, I think Trump will win. And no, I don't like Chinese food. If I'm going to eat Asian food, it's Indian food for the most part. I'm not into Chinese is too oily. Used to like it. I like Mugu Gai Pan. I like teriyaki, but other than that, not really. I know a lot of this doesn't have to do with politics, but I might as well answer questions here too. It's live, goddammit! Men are not oppressed, neither are women. Everyone's oppressed by the government. Nobody's oppressed by other private parts of the population. Private parts of the population. Unless it's like a group like a corporation or a bank or something or a union that's strangling them. Men and women are not oppressed by the other sex in any way, shape, or form, unless the government has dogmatized such oppression. It requires the government to do so. The legal system that MRAs complain about is government administered. It's the legal system. It's the judiciary. Sort of the social side that feminists would complain about. It's all influenced by the government, sort of the Hoover mentality, the nifty 50s coming back to bite us in the ass. It's all the same stuff. It's the government. And I oppose all forms of political correctness. I don't believe there's a need for any form of censorship whatsoever, either left or right, which are really illusions for the most part. And I've never read any Ayn Rand. I'm not interested in it because that's subjectivism. That's not libertarianism. That's corporate stuff from the sort of Gilded Age. Nuclear holocaust? Yeah, unfortunately, it's likely. It's just a matter of time. The problem is this: you have a large enough natural disaster, and all of those missiles on dead hand systems are going to set themselves off, like from a major meteor strike or something. They will detect it as a nuclear detonation. They will go off, especially if a nuclear reactor gets hit, because I think some of them also use radiation levels as an indicator. If that Russian asteroid had hit a nuclear plant, then we probably wouldn't be here right now because of the dead hand system they assuredly have. We have similar systems here. They're mostly autonomous. All that would be required is a large enough disruption of communication so that the dudes in the bunker with the nuclear codes are cut off from the outside world and think they've already been nuked. And they'll press the little red button most of the time in testing. Yeah, Trump is a fake race realist. Another reason why I'm not particularly compelled by his campaign. The whole, I mean, Islam isn't a race. I don't care about blocking Islamic immigration because why would I want more zealots in the country? We're just slowly exiting the dark ages of Christianity. Why the fuck do I want a bunch of religious Muslim whack jobs in the country doing the same things that they did? But as for like the southern border, talking about, oh, well, they're sending rapists here, they're not sending their best. Trump doesn't appear to realize that most of those individuals, number one, are not Mexican. They're from Central America. Number two, would gladly immigrate legally if they had the opportunity to do so, if it didn't cost so much and take so long and get throttled by the number of visas issued. Number three, many of them, they revert to a life of crime specifically because they've been forced to enter illegally. They can't stay in their home country because they face systematic oppression. See, when people talk about oppression from women, from men, from whatever, they don't even realize that that oppression is very real in other parts of the world. Women who rant about being oppressed in the Western world, they're not oppressed. They should be looking at the same Middle East that's supplying all these migrants. They'll see what oppression really means. They'll see people getting their heads chopped off, getting stoned, getting beaten and whipped. That's where it actually happens. It happens in the uncivilized world, and I'm not going to mince words. I consider them uncivilized. It would be just like if there was a country, and there are a few in Africa, but if there was some country that lived like people did under medieval Christianity, I would call them uncivilized. I'd call them barbaric. I'd call them subhuman even. Well, that's the way parts of the Middle East operate. I don't care if people think that makes me bigoted. I don't support Islam. I don't consider it different from Christianity. I look at them, both organized religions, both Abrahamist. They're not races. Christianity is a Middle Eastern religion. What? So do these PC idiots want me to stop criticizing that too because I might offend somebody from the Middle East who's a Christian? I don't care about their feelings. I don't care if they're offended. I don't care if anyone's offended by my work. I tell it like I see it. No, nobody's going to institute the draft because of Syria. Syria should stew and settle itself out. We shouldn't be involved. There wouldn't be an issue right now in Syria if Obama hadn't been arming the rebels there, because Assad could have clamped down. He could have killed all the rebels and things would be fine there. The people of Syria, largely, if you ask them, appear to want to return to Syria, but they can't because there's nowhere for them to go because everything's been completely decimated. It was decimated and defecated by the FSA, not by Assad's forces. Assad started dropping barrel bombs because he ran out of proper munitions that he could use to actually target the rebels with any great degree of accuracy because the U.S. kept supplying the FSA. Well, the FSA are terrorists. They're an Islamic militia. They support Sharia law. They're just nationalists instead of pan-nationalists like ISIS. It's the only real difference. I don't even really see that as a major difference. My view of God is as a being that doesn't exist. The Christian God isn't there. There's no Allah. There's no Jehovah. These beings, they're not real. It's a fairy tale that people happen to use to make their lives seem more interesting and more meaningful. I do believe that there are cosmic forces, spiritual forces, but I don't try to put a specific label on many of them because I don't fucking know. And I'm not going to trust some half-literate idiot herding goats from 2,000 years ago to tell me what their meaning is either. I'd much rather delve into the philosophical works of the occult, and I see a lot more wisdom in those, especially when you read into them as metaphor, as steganography. If you take them literally, then there is some of the cauldrons and black cat stuff. You read a layer deeper, and you find out what the real meaning is, and it's like the Liber Salomonis that I'm editing right now. I'm about half done with it now. On the surface, it's telling you how to do sorcery and enchant things. On a deeper level, it's just a bestiary that also happens to describe magnetism and certain chemical properties of other stones and herbs and medicinal use of herbs. It's essentially one part herbal, one part bestiary, and one part almost a treatise on things like metallurgy and mineralogy. But if you were to look at it in a completely literal sense, you wouldn't assume that. You would say, well, it's telling me how to curse my enemies or how to keep my home safe from marauders or something. It's completely different when you look into it as metaphor. I support deism. I don't have a problem with people who believe in the Christian God but don't really care about the church, because it's the church that was always the problem. Christianity as a dogma can be taken in a very peaceful and loving manner. The Unitarians do it. But most Christians don't. Most of them are just a bunch of vile fucking bigots, just like most Muslims. Regardless of what the dogma contains, I choose to read it and said, well, even the dogma is violent there. Most Muslims do believe that people should have their hands chopped off for stealing. Most Muslims do not believe in women's rights. Most Muslims believe gays should be killed. So why would I want, if a person is supposedly progressive or liberal or multicultural, why the hell would they want them to come into their country? I don't fucking understand it. It's suicidal. The Swedes and the Germans, the people like Merkel, they're suicidal. They want their own cultures to be completely decimated. Yeah, I get a little bit fiery talking about it. I don't want to see anyone's culture destroyed. It's like people complain about colonialism. Yeah, colonialism destroyed a lot of African cultures. Now a lot of European cultures are being destroyed. Well, you know, which is it? Is colonialism and displacement evil, or is it good when it happens to Europeans? I don't think it should happen to anyone. Everyone should have their own culture. You know, if I go to India, I've said this before, I don't want to see McDonald's in India. I don't want to see, you know, Toys R Us in India. I want to see Indian things. I want to see their companies, their food, their culture, their clothing, because I have an appreciation for it. If I was a bigot, I'd say, oh, fucking build a McDonald's here and fucking destroy their culture. As for the United States, I don't have a problem with the concept of pluralism. I think having subcultures is great. Yeah, if I go to Boston and go to some Irish heavy area, getting real Irish food, that's great. Or down in the deep South, where there are places where there are a lot of people from Mexico, and you can get real Mexican food. Have you ever had a real Mexican taco or real tamales as opposed to the shit at Taco Bell? It's great. But that doesn't mean I want it to displace the entire culture of the US, because the entire culture is made up of so many different subcultures. I want them all to exist. I want to see, if I go to Chinatown, I don't want to see a bunch of, you know, Italians in Chinatown displacing it. I'll go to Little Italy if I want to eat Italian food. I want to be able to sample it all. I don't want it to be homogenized, because homogenization it destroys all of the cultures composing it. This doesn't make me a bigot. This makes me appreciative of all those cultures. If I go to an African restaurant, I'm not ordering a burger and fries. I'm ordering something that's hopefully authentically African for food. And if I go to Africa, I'm not going to tell them how to live and say, well, you should build a McDonald's and learn how to do this and that and the other thing, and you need to be like us. I don't want them to be like us. I want them to be like themselves, because I care enough to want to preserve their culture too. I wouldn't go to Ghana and order a McDonald's burger. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, that's what I think on such issues. I don't like homogenization. I don't support multiculturalism. I support pluralism. But in a culture that's already homogenous under some sort of nation state ethos, you would think of some of the African nations, some of the Asian states, much of Europe. No, they shouldn't be accepting mass migrants. If they're accepting a very small number of immigrants, that's one thing. Nobody had a problem with that back in the 80s or 90s when it was a small number of people entering these countries. Now you have a situation where first and second generation immigrants from times past, people from Asia or people from India or something, who are living in places like the UK, are terrified of the new immigrants that are coming there, because these new immigrants wander through the streets openly proclaiming Sharia for all. We will take you over. We will cut your heads off. It doesn't make any sense to me. You're not just hurting the native culture. You're hurting immigrants that are already there, that wanted to be in Europe for liberty. They wanted to be free of all the shit from their home nations, from the oppression, from the censorship. Yeah, I tend to ramble a bit, go on for 15 minutes. That wasn't quite 15. I'm going to go back to the voting here. Sanders still ahead by 58%. And still only 2 of these areas are Hillary victories. Yeah. I'm going to assume Concord Ward 5 is like the upper class part of Concord, where all the wine tippers live, because they seem to be the sort of people who would like Hillary. And Millsfield, I'll just assume that that's one fucking tourist resort. Oh, that's only 3 votes reporting. Who gives a fuck about that? As for the Republicans, it's basically Trump and Kasich winning everything here. Jeb is in 4th now. Ted Cruz is pulled slightly ahead, but they're like 0.1% away from one another. Marco, poor Marco. He's still in 5th, though. And he seems to have declined slightly. Kasich is at 16. It looks like it's Trump's night as far as the Republicans go. That would put Kasich roughly on par with where he was at in the polling. Oh, yeah, now Jeb is ahead by, fucking 27 votes or so over Ted Cruz. Yeah, poor Ted. But I think the loser of the night goes to Marco Rubio. Everyone else pretty much is performing as you would have anticipated, except for Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio appears to have utterly and completely collapsed, which I find great. I find it hilarious. I cursed him with my meme music. Yeah, Bush in 3rd is a little bit strange. I would have said before, again, I predicted Rubio was the most likely to carry 3rd. I would have said Cruz would have been more likely than Jeb. But it's not going to help him. Jeb is a Bush. Going into the other states, that's going to hold him back, because people don't want a Bush any more than they want a Clinton. People may have a short attention span, but not that fucking short. W wasn't that many years ago. Most people who are voting still remember the W years. I know I do. Most people from my generation were aware of the fact that things went awry under Bubba. Yeah, I can talk about memetics. Memetics is the concept of the creation of, essentially it's this. If you take it in a secular manner, if I say something, it affects your understanding of reality. It creates an idea in your head. These can be, under certain conditions, self-perpetuating, or even act as though a virus would act. That is, the idea gets lodged in your head and sort of it causes you to want to spread it to others, almost a little bit like you're infected with a disease. Memetics is reality, and it's not exactly a new theory. As far as it concerns the occult, it's very ancient. On a secular level, it was only fairly recently described in human literature, and now there are several schools of thought that deal with it. But as far as the occult goes, the concept of affecting another person's reality through generally a vocal incantation of sorts or a ritual is very ancient. It goes back thousands of years. In fact, you could say it was one of the earliest manifestations of spirituality. These people on places like 4chan that talk about Kek or Ebola Chan or anything like that, they don't even realize that they're performing what, in an ancient sense, by pagans or by hermetics or something, would have been considered literal magic. The fact that science happens to be slightly able to quantify it doesn't change the fact that it's considered a spiritual form, any more than alchemy, as early chemistry, stops being spiritual as well. And it has a metaphoric meaning as well. Yeah, chaos magic. Meme magic is real. It's not just a joke. I think people don't quite understand this. They joke about it. Oh, we're performing meme magic. That's literally what it is. It's a form of occultism. Politically incorrect is not a Christian board. If anything, it leans more towards paganism than blind worship of. I think about it. This is where all the Jew memes originate. It's not exactly going to worship a Jewish carpenter. Yeah. Oh, I don't care if somebody thumbs me down. People will thumb down anything these days. No, I don't have a video on memetics yet. Memetics, that is. But I'll make one. I need to make more occult videos, but right now, because it's the first 3 states in the political season, I figured I'd focus heavily on politics. That's really what people are talking about. I use 4chan every day. I'm a regular user there. I occasionally drop an image notifying people that it's me. Most of the time, I'm fully anonymous, though, there. We're Legion. We forgive and forget a lot. Yeah, I think, wasn't it Dawkins that created the term meme? I remember it being mentioned in one of my high school classes in general science there. That was when it was still a fairly new concept. The delay on YouTube, I think, is like 10 seconds-ish or something like that. If I turned the audio on right now, I could actually hear myself on video, which would be really, really funny. But it would also distract me. But yeah, I think it's about a 10-second delay or thereabouts. I don't know why, but debt is told. Yeah, I can't wait to see all the like MSNBC, HuffPost, all those, especially Salon. Can you imagine how Salon? Salon was the magazine there that was defending the dude who said he had fantasies about like adolescence. And he wrote a Salon article and said, "Oh, well, I'm not a monster. I would never hurt a child," and stuff like that. It's like, come on. You're giving, a fucking forum to somebody like that to fucking talk. It's not somebody who's saying, "Oh, well, we need to reform our age of consent laws because of this case where a 17-year-old went to prison for 30 years. It's not something like that. It's talking about someone who actively fantasizes about these things, but swears they would never break the law. Well, would you let a kleptomaniac guard your purse? Would you let an arsonist guard the oil well? I'm guessing fucking not. Salon gives airtime to the most scummy elements of humanity. People like Lena Dunham, who's also a kiddie fiddler. That fucking dongle woman who was just in it for the money. As long as somebody is just a complete fucking whack job, they can get a forum on Salon to talk about whatever they want. I should write something for them and talk about how it's not okay to Nazi shame people and, people should be able to wear Hitler mustaches. Stuff like that. They'd probably think it was cool. They'd probably accept it too. I could probably write a more after all the blog posts and editing work and stuff that I've done, I could probably write a more coherent story than most of the people on Salon that claim to be editors. By editor, they mean they just chose to submit a story and it got accepted because it was really far left. Angiosperms and gymnosperms. I remember those days in AP Bio, but most of what I learned is probably outdated. I think there's a whole new kingdom of life forms since I took it, so it's not worth talking about anything other than like herbalism as far as plants go. Yeah, I know that just because you have a fetish doesn't mean you'll act upon it, but do you think that this dude wouldn't act upon it if it wasn't illegal? And who's to say that he hasn't acted upon it? He's not going to admit it on Salon. He's not going to say, "Oh, yeah, well, mostly I avoid breaking the law and going to prison for 20 or 30 years and getting branded a sex offender. Oh, mostly I avoid it, except for that one time a couple years ago." He obviously, if he did do such a thing, he's going to lie about it because it's illegal. That would be like someone making a Salon article and saying, "Yeah, I cook up crack in my living room every weekend, and that's how I funded my career," or something. Yeah, I made a startup. I bought my own business with heroin money. Yeah, like they're not going to get a knock on the door from the FBI the next day. How are the votes counted? I think most of New Hampshire still uses paper ballots and counts by hand. Up here in New England, there aren't a lot of electronic machines with voting. Like here in Vermont, I know we just barely got the machines that you feed the paper ballots actually into to collect them. Before that, you put it in a little box with a slot in the top. We're pretty low tech, but that means nobody can rig the vote electronically. they can't do it because it's all paper ballots. It gets compiled electronically afterwards for, public access and stuff, like, the vote counts and the totals and everything. But it's all on paper. It actually, personally, I think we should have a constitutional amendment to prevent any use of electronics in voting whatsoever. We saw with the Microsoft app, it just caused a bunch of fucking, drama. Yeah, I know, hanging chads and stuff like that. Things should be checked beforehand by an independent panel, not by a bunch of people who work for the DNC and the RNC. When there are third-party candidates on these ballots at times, it doesn't make any sense. There should be an independent commission, no electronics whatsoever, no apps to vote with, no voting by computer. I know there are some countries that use that. I'm not exactly for that. If you had a method by which it could be done and make it very difficult to hack the system, then it would be fine. But it's not. It's really not difficult to hack these voting machines. It's been done. We've seen evidence of electoral fraud or at the very least mistakes being made in every single election that they've been used. But the only time that hanging chads and stuff like that was an issue was an election that was closely contested. Usually, you don't have 0.1% separating two candidates in a state. You don't have to worry about that problem. What I'd be more worried about is an electronic system getting hacked and one opponent magically getting 5% more of the vote that doesn't even exist. That's the real voter fraud in this country. It's not dead people voting. It's not illegals voting. It's not people voting twice or anything like that. It's machines. It's their fault. It's the fault of computer systems and their limitations as far as security goes. And these systems they're not even encrypted or anything. It's just ridiculous. Yeah, e-voting could replace it, but it's not secure enough yet. Yeah, Trump has been declared the winner, apparently, with 10.6% of the precincts reporting, and Sanders as well. Sanders is actually back up near 60. Bad night for Hillary. And it looks like Trump actually exceeded his expectations by at least a couple of points, because I think 34 was the highest recent poll that he had, and he was averaging like 31, 32. Kasich is a few points ahead of where he was, even after jumping up. He has apparently taken second. And it looks like Ted Cruz might edge out Jeb for third. That's actually not bad for Trump either. Rubio taking third would be great because, he wouldn't get any real bump from another third-place win. Nobody would be impressed. But Ted, Cruz getting third, yeah, that works going forward because, he's still in third place. Obviously not as great as a first place win. And then Trump will just come out and say, well, he must have stolen a couple votes. Jeb actually won or something like that. Looks like Christie actually significantly outperformed, but he'll probably drop out. Let's predict who will drop out. This Gilmore dude, I don't know anything about him. I didn't even know he existed. Maybe he's already dropped out, and that's why he only has 14 votes. Fiorina, can she go forward? Probably not. Ben Carson, he swears that he'll be in it for South Carolina. Will he actually be? Okay, I'll take his word for it. Christie, as the weakest of the three governors, probably leaves. Rubio at this point, his grasp on being in the election is tenuous at best. You got to realize he only finished third in Iowa. People were only surprised because he was higher than expected in the polls, but now he's like 4 or 5 points below where he expected to be at. I don't think that's good news for Rubio. That bump that he had nationally, did you check the RCP for national polling for the GOP? It looked like Rubio was quickly rising up towards a level where he would supplant Ted Cruz or even Trump himself. But after finishing fifth in the real bellwether state, he's going to be utterly forgotten. The only reason people will be talking about him is they'll declare the debate, the robotic debate moment, his Howard Dean moment, and say that he would have come in second. He had this, Kasich at 16. I think Rubio was above 16 in the polling until a few days ago. They'll say, oh, well, he would have come in second at least. His 3-2-1 plan would have worked, but then he had the debate moment. Chris Christie fucked him. So, yeah, that's probably his Howard Dean moment. I think Rubio's barely in third in South Carolina anyway. Not even placing in the top 3 in New Hampshire. That doesn't bode well. This is a state he should technically be the front runner here if it weren't for Trump. Somebody like Rubio, who's younger, who is more of a centrist, who's a smooth talker. Let's face it. He should be a major frontrunner. He should be number 1 or 2, really, in New Hampshire, in a perfect situation for him. I think there's real danger of Rubio dropping out after South Carolina if he doesn't come in the top 3, because that means he hasn't won any of the first 3 states. The best he gets is a 3rd place showing in Iowa. Well, who the fuck cares about that? People who are worried about Rubio's nationwide rise, that sudden increase of 10 points in the national polling, again, it's temporary. It's just a lag of the polls that fail to reflect his poor debate performance. And after this, he's going to get hit down again. Cruz might get a slight bump, really, from finishing 3rd. But I mean, he already won Iowa, and the bump he received was negligible at best. Kasich will get a bump, but he doesn't have any national presence. It's Trump that's likely to suddenly skyrocket now from winning the real bellwether state. We could see Trump go up to 40. Trump would never nominate Rand as his Veep. It would never fucking happen. Trump and Rand have bad blood between them, I think. Yeah, I've heard of Terrence McKenna. Yeah, some good stuff. Yeah, so it looks like Trump has won by an amount that wasn't expected. He's actually a few points ahead of where he expected to be. Kasich coming in 2nd with, again, about 11% of the vote in now. At 16%, a really good night for Kasich considering that he has no national presence. But again, good for Trump because it bumps someone else out of the top 3. Doesn't really help Kasich because he doesn't have anyone helping him do anything in any of these other states. He'll get to South Carolina, he'll have like 10 volunteers. He'll still be running 6th in the polling. He's actually fucked his own campaign by just focusing on New Hampshire. But what he has done is really run interference for Trump tonight. It's actually pretty funny because Rubio appears to have suffered just an absolutely massive defeat. He's barely in the double digits. That could change. It could go down to like sub 10%. When more precincts come in. But Trump and Sanders have already been declared the winners. Remember, in Iowa, it took them a while. You saw, I think it was like at 70% counted before they declared for Cruz. And they didn't declare for the Democratic side until the next day. Here in New Hampshire, you've got 10% of the vote in. They've already declared it because it's already clear who the winners will be. That's good. That's a much better win than what Cruz or Clinton kind of, Sanders kind of in Iowa got. And still, you can't declare a winner on the Democratic side in Iowa. It was almost a perfect draw. I think that Hillary is declining slightly because of the sexism stuff. Having Madeleine Albright come out and talk about women going to hell if they don't vote for rankles people. I can imagine. I consider this. I've got quite a few liberal friends. You know, I don't have a problem with somebody being a friend of mine just because they're liberal, just because I happen to disagree with them. I've got friends that are conservative too. I don't agree with them, but they're still, you know, friendly to me or whatever. I haven't met a single person who is voting for Hillary. Not one. Now, granted, you know, this is the younger generation. I'm an under 30, and so they're more heavily for Sanders. But I haven't met a single person who's even, I mean, they're dismissive of her campaign. Not only are they not going to vote for her, they're completely dismissive of her and her qualifications. They just think that she's a dishonest bitch, honestly. Even if they're not a Sanders voter, I've seen just as many people that say Trump is the next savior of the United States as have said, well, I'm voting for Sanders. And that's in the younger generation. That should have the Democrats worried. You could end up with the rise of a new Reagan youth style thing. But nobody has gone for Hillary. I imagine if she does become the nominee, a hell of a lot of people who are soft supporters of the Democratic Party will either stay home or they'll vote for the Republicans. You could see a Nixonian style landslide victory for whoever the Republican nominee is. And after tonight, it looks like Trump will probably be far more likely to be that nominee. There was some doubt as to that after Iowa, but again, Cruz painted himself into the Santorum corner in an evangelical state. Rubio melted down. He was the only one really with a chance. Jeb is a Bush. Kasich doesn't have any national ground game whatsoever. It's all in New Hampshire. So which one of these four people going forward is going to be able to compete with Trump? The dude who doesn't have a presence in South Carolina, the dude who has just collapsed completely and probably, won't even be in the top 3 come next week, the person who's got the surname of the most hated modern president. I mean, I can't think of a way forward for them. Ted Cruz is the only one that's even remotely there, but again, he's still like 15 points behind in South Carolina, and a third place win in New Hampshire is not going to give him a bump if a first place win in Iowa didn't. He didn't get a single new point in New Hampshire or nationally because of his win in Iowa. Nobody cared. Partially because of the problem of him going after Carson. They may not be Carson supporters. Carson here is in last place, basically. He's at 2.4% of the vote. He's behind Carly Fiorina. She's got almost twice as many votes as he does, and this is Carly Fiorina we're talking about. But when you do that to another candidate, the only one who has done that and not suffered completely is Donald Trump. He's the only one who has really hardballed any of the other candidates and survived it. Fiorina tried it, when she was at her peak, and she declined because Trump smacked her down. Ted Cruz tried. He got smacked down. He's, running third. And now Rubio, who has been running second after a 5th place win. So I'm sure he'll cast it as a win somehow. And then he'll talk about dispelling myths for all night. But no, I don't think he'll still be in the top 3 in South Carolina in a few days. The polling is going to go badly for Marco Rubio. Yeah, but it's almost 9 o'clock. They've already declared the victors. Not a surprise who the victors were. Not a surprise that Kasich managed to slide into second. And in a few minutes here, I'm going to end the live stream because I want to go and watch some coverage of the result. I want to see how the media handles it. I want to see how groups like Salon and HuffPost handle Trump winning in New Hampshire and winning by an unexpected margin. I want to see how they handle their golden boy Rubio, who's sort of like the Hillary Clinton of the Republican Party, sliding into 5th. I want to see how they handle that. Oh, man, their reaction is going to be fucking priceless. For Rubio to succumb to that many people, and Jeb maybe not even being in the top 3. He went from 5th place in Iowa to 4th place in New Hampshire. Oh, yeah, major victory. That's exactly. He'll say, oh, well, I moved up a point. And then he'll say, choo-choo, choo-choo. And he'll start playing with his fucking plastic turtles or something. Yeah, I'm not going to stream my reaction because, I'm just getting over a cold right now. That's why I've taken several breaks. On the hour, every hour. But I'll end this in a couple minutes here because it's going to be so funny to watch the... I have to go. Also, I want to RuneScape a little bit as well and do other things. I think I got a Facebook message. Yeah. Oh, that's a private message for me. But yeah, Trump won. Some people were saying, oh, well, Marco Rubio might actually win the state of New Hampshire. No, bro, it was Trump. Yeah. White privilege. Oh, God. All right, folks, well, I'm out. There's still the chance that a last-minute rigging could happen and Rubio could somehow manage to win the state, but I don't think it's happening at this point. I think it just refreshed again. Yeah, it's 17% of precincts reporting Trump still ahead with 34-ish. Kasich's got 16. Cruz has 12. Jeb's right behind him at 11.7. The only confusion now is whether Ted or Jeb got third. But again, it doesn't really help Cruz. He already won Iowa. It didn't give him a bump. Jeb may or may not be in the top 3, but he'll be at the bottom of the top 3 if he is. And Sanders has completely annihilated Hillary Clinton with 17% of the precincts reporting there. This map, though, if you look at it for the Republicans, if you look at it for the Democratic side, it's 2 voting areas went for Clinton. Everything else is Bernie. I think it looks like about 50 of them. And for the Republican side, it's virtually all for Trump, a few for Kasich, and then 1 for Ted Cruz up there in the far north of the state. I'm going to assume that's like, I think that's that one township, that really early, Millsville, I think it was called, that decided to vote early alongside Dixville Notch. I think Cruz won that one. It's funny because Dixville Notch went 3-2, Kasich and Trump for the Republicans there, and they've actually got a pretty good track record of choosing what their state will do. I think it's because Kasich was the only one that showed up there though this time, so I guess that they're batting poorly this political season. Yeah, I almost feel sorry for Rubio. Not really, but slightly. Sticks-themed version of a drinking game. Yeah, I wouldn't want to encourage alcoholism among my subscribers, so officially I reprimand you for making the suggestion. I don't care, though. It's okay. So, everybody have a good night. That concludes this happy live stream, because I'm wheezing a little bit because, again, the cold got into my lungs. I really shouldn't be live streaming right now, but I had to. It only comes once every 4 years. I wasn't fucking missing it this time. Last time around, I don't even think I could do a live stream. They even have live streaming on YouTube, except for like Vivo partners and stuff. But yeah, hail Satan, praise Odin and Thor and Zeus and all of these other goodies. That's about all. Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders have triumphed. Peace out. If I can figure out how to stop. Oh, yeah, I got to go to the other screen. Bye-bye.